Everyone, it's good to be with all of you. I want to introduce Lily Lycum from Lakewood High School, and she will lead us in the pledge tonight. Thank you. We welcome those who are here for purposes of addressing the board in the proper time and the order of their request. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please fill out a form indicating your name and agenda item you wish to address. You may also make a request to give testimony on an item not listed for discussion today. However, full discussion on any items not listed on the agenda will have to be delayed until such a time as the item can be publicly posted in advance as a regular agenda item. If you wish to ask questions, please address them to the chair and not to individual members of the board or staff. The board has been meeting in closed session regarding matters listed on today's closed session agenda and wishes to report that no reportable actions were taken. So we will, item 8, call for agenda items for separate action, adoption of the agenda as posted. We have several housekeeping changes requested by staff. You can keep track if you want. A lot of it is just moving them into other places, but they're all there. First, item 14.2, approval of purchasing and contracts report B should be moved to 15.2 under consent calendar C. Also, item 13.1, the approval of minutes for the November 2nd board meeting should be moved to 14.2 under consent calendar B. Item 13.10, adoption of resolution 111622 should be moved to item 14.3 under consent calendar B. Additionally, it is requested that item 18.1, approve the reappointment of Personnel Commissioner Linda Vaughn, be moved up to be included in the consent calendar as item 13.12. Is there any other requests regarding the agenda? If not, I'll make a motion to make the changes requested by staff to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Did you say item 13.10 or 11?
I said 13.10.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 5-0. And my mic wasn't on for my alliteration joke. Welcome, Lily Lycum from Lakewood.
Good evening, distinguished members of the Board of Education, executive staff, my family, Mr. Booth, and all other guests here tonight. My name is Lily Lycum, and I am ASB president at Lakewood High School. I am very honored to be speaking to all of you tonight about all of the wonderful things that are happening at Lakewood High School. So we've had a very successful start to the school year and the quarter. Our theme has been centering relationships, where teachers receive a charm and a goodie bag with an emphasis on the importance of prioritizing school relationships within our community. The goal is to change the hearts and the minds of adults so that more of our students feel like they belong at Lakewood. Our football team is going to the semifinals for the first time in over a decade. This is a really big deal, and it has really helped to revive our school spirit. We are really proud of our team. Beyond fulfilling our positions on student council, we are working hard on Project Shepherd, which is a project to feed homeless families in Lakewood. We're doing our part for the community by collecting canned goods. We are also working on starting a Save Promise Club to support our See Something, Say Something program. Today, actually, we had a homeroom rep meeting where we talked to all of the homeroom representatives about council and school-wide events because it is important for them to stay informed. These meetings are also a great opportunity to hear student opinions so that we can constantly strive to make Lakewood better for everyone. Also, this week we're in the middle of our Senior Spirit Week, which is pretty exciting for the class of 2023. And furthermore, after hosting our first homecoming dance in decades and it being a huge success, we are now planning our winter formal, which will be hosted at the Huntington Club, and students are really looking forward to that. We're keeping it good in the wood, and we're very grateful for all of your continued support, and we hope that all of you have a very relaxing holiday break. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. I think Mr. Itzen prepped you. So your ASB president, senior year, crunch time for plans for next year. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about and dreaming about for next year.
Okay, so I'm still applying to colleges. My dream is actually UCLA. My mom went there, and it's her birthday today, so yeah.
Why don't you introduce your mama since it's her birthday today, or any other folks you have out there supporting you?
My mom, my dad, and my little brother. And it's her birthday, yeah. So at UCLA, I want to study communications or political science because I want to go to law school eventually. I want to be a criminal justice lawyer and be a voice for victims of violence.
Wow, thank you. Colleagues, any questions for Lily?
I would just like to congratulate your parents, Liddy, for raising you the right way.
I love it.
Mr. Otto.
Sure. Can you tell me a little bit more about your interest in criminal justice work?
So I actually did a program over the summer with the National Student Leadership Conference. It was at Yale, so it was a huge privilege. And I got to do a law and advocacy program. And there we did a huge mock trial in a courtroom. And we did a whole simulation case. And I grew so passionate about it. And even though it wasn't real, it really made me want to pursue it in the future, because if in those real situations, it's really important for someone to advocate for victims. So I want to do that when I grow up.
Great.
Well, we're so grateful that you were here to talk to us about Lakewood and talk to us about you and introduce your family. Happy birthday to your mom. You've raised a wonderful one over here. So we understand it is a weeknight and they'll be nearing the holiday. I know you might have some homework or some things to do tonight. So you're welcome to stick around if you'd like to see how this process works. Otherwise, you're absolutely welcome to go on your way.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Sorry, Ms. Craighead.
I think we need to do a photo.
Oh, yes.
All right, star of the show.
Yay. Do I stay here?
You get to sit right here in the middle.
Oh, wow.
You get me.
Thank you.
Yes, big weekend. Yes.
Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you. Thank you.
Okay, up next, item 10, student recognitions and acknowledgements. I believe we have one of our TOSAs who will be featured tonight.
My name is David McAnder. I'm a TOSA. I work at Fremont and Prisk Elementary School, and I've been working with the Long Beach Unified School District for 20 years. I have over 500 students per week, and so trying to get to know all of them is a little difficult, but the activities that we do in the science lab, that's what it's all about. I want the kids to be thinking about what's going on in the world and to be basing that on evidence. What kind of evidence are they seeing? Are they wondering what's going on? Are they asking questions? And so that's what I try to do in the lab. If they come to me and they ask me, hey, what is this? I don't tell them. I walk them through the process to figure it out, because I want them to be thinkers, and I want them to come out into this society and actually, be meaningful members of the society. The PTA and community at both schools are just amazing. They're super supportive of what we do. I couldn't be in a better spot.
We love that. Thank you, Mr. McAnder, for all you do. Learning through the world through evidence. I love it. We're going to move on to item 11, public testimony on items listed on the agenda, and I'm seeing none. Letitia, is that correct? Okay. So item 12, public testimony on items not listed on the agenda. We have one tonight. Robert Collins, welcome.
Go ahead and take off my mask as I turns it up. Good evening. The Respect of Marriage Act passed the Senate today, a good day for queer kids. It was wonderful to see that Measure Q was passing. Our students can take pride Long Beach sent an openly gay immigrant to Congress, and Long Beach now has its first black mayor. Representation matters. At the last board meeting, I shared an email I had written to my son's principal, noting my disappointment in the way he communicated to me about a booster club sponsoring a fundraiser at Chick-fil-A. Because of queer activism, Chick-fil-A stopped donating to anti-LGBTQIA groups. Activism matters. More importantly, gay students matter. We must stop sending messages to queer kids that they are less than. Please note, there are still problems. Don Cathy, Chick-fil-A founder and owner, personally donated a sum of money to groups that are working against the Equality Act, which according to NPR is a bill that would ban discrimination against people based on sexual orientation and gender identity. According to Medium, Cathy also is a member of NCF. Organizations receiving the most funds from NCF included the Alliance Defending Freedom, which has advocated for sterilizing transgender individuals, and the Family Research Council, which has advocated conversion therapy. Members of the Research Council, including Tony Perkins, the organization's president, have sought to link pedophilia and homosexuality. Leaders in Long Beach should be able to put their heads together and come up with simple guidelines that allow our booster clubs to make money, but also respect all communities, all people, all students. Stop telling kids they are less than. Through the chair, Mr. Strumpfer, according to the California Department of Education, school districts should be open and transparent in determining policies with regard to the implementation of legislation, including laws that protect LGBTQI students, such as a Safe Place to Learn Act, the FAIR Act, and California Healthy Schools Act. LBUSD principals should be able to communicate with parents specific actions they are taking to make sure these laws are being implemented at their schools. Students matter. Gay students matter. I look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Seeing no more public comment, we'll move on to the next item. So we're going to move on to consent calendar A, which includes items 13.2 to 13.9 and 13.11 to 13.12. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is the time for questions, comments, call-outs, and clarifications, and I see Mr. Cotto is here with Ms. Vaughn and Mr. Ulaszewski to talk about item 13.12, approved to reappoint Personnel Commission Linda Vaughn.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, President Kerr, members of the Board of Education, Deputy Superintendent Brown, and members of the executive staff. My name is Ken Cotto. I'm the Executive Officer of the Personnel Commission and Classified Employment for the Personnel Commission. Tonight before you is a recommendation for the renewal of a 3-year term for one of our Personnel Commissioners, Linda Vaughn. She has been a part of our 3-member commission since March of 2011. She has been an excellent leader for our department and is currently the chairperson. Her background includes a 43-year career for the Linwood Unified School District, where she retired as the office manager of Linwood High School. She has also been the CSCA Union Chapter President at Linwood and is currently the chairperson of the CSCA Merit System Committee. Also here in support is one of my other commissioners, Terry Ulaszewski. Ms. Vaughn is here, so if there's any questions that you have for her, she can answer them.
Ms. Vaughn, did you want to say a few words? We'd love to have you.
President Kerr, school board members, executive staff, and community. It is my honor to have serve the Linwood Unified School District. Did I say Linwood? Long Beach, because he said Linwood. Long Beach Unified School District. It is a pleasure. I am from a merit district. I believe that the merit system is workable as long as we work together. I want to thank you for your consideration of me being your commissioner for another term. And we're always open to hear anything that we can do for the district to help support the children by making sure that we have the best employees we can get. We know this is trying times. The pandemic threw a wrench in everything, but I think that's almost over now, that we are continuing to do our best. And I think we have one of the best staffs in California. It has been a pleasure to work with them, and so knowledgeable. And then because they're so good, we've lost a few of them. So thank you for allowing me to say these few words. And again, I say it is really, truly an honor to be a commissioner for the Long Beach Unified School District.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Linda. I participated in your appointment as a parent representative in 2011. So it's a thrill that you continue to say yes to serve our students and families and our employees here. So thank you so much. And Mr. Ulaszewski, thank you so much for your continued service to our district. Any other comments, clarifications on our consent calendar A? Okay.
Actually, sorry.
Go ahead. Yep.
I just want to thank the Norris Foundation for their donation of $35,000 to CAMS for the robotics program. Thank you for that very generous donation. And we love getting all kinds of donations. Hearts and Hands United in Giving donated school supplies, uniforms, and other items for Bethune. And so these donations will be very much appreciated.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Oh, you ready to vote, or were you reaching to say something?
Oh, ready to vote.
Okay.
Ready to vote, Madam Chair.
Mr. Otto.
Aye.
Ms. Craighead.
Aye.
Dr. Benitez.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And I vote aye. That passes 4-0-0. Moving on to consent calendar B, which includes 14.1, 2, and 3. Do I have a motion?
Excuse me, I'd like to pull item 14.2 for discussion.
The minutes?
No, the approval of purchasing contract B according to my agenda.
Okay, so we
It is-
reordered a couple things. So that item is
15.2.
15.2, I believe, is in consent calendar C now.
Okay,
So we moved it to consent calendar C.
okay.
So you can
I'll wait, proceed.
pull it. Okay. So consent calendar B, we had a motion and a second.
Actually, before we have a motion, I think Mr. Miller needs to make a
Oh,
statement.
wait, did we have a second?
I don't have a motion.
Oh,
We don't really want
I
a
move
motion
to
yet.
approve consent calendar B.
and
Yes, I have a,
we'll do it under discussion. Hang on.
I'll second that.
Okay,
As amended when we amended the agenda.
thank you. Mr. Miller.
I will recuse myself from consent calendar B, item 14.1, as I have a potential conflict of interest under Government Code 1090 and 87100. SoCal Gas provides services to the Long Beach Unified School District and has, in the last 12 months, provided a donation to the nonprofit corporation Ranchos Los Amigos Foundation, of which I am the CEO. I will also not be voting on items 14.2 and 14.3, as I was absent from the last meeting due to a health issue.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just a point of order. If a person recuses his or herself, are they allowed to stay in the room for the discussion?
In this situation, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? This passes 4-0 with one recusal. Consent calendar C, I will be recusing myself from participation in consent calendar C. I have a potential financial interest under Government Code 1091 and 87100. My husband works for a subcontractor who has done work for the payees or awardees. Ms. Craighead, could you handle the vote, please?
Yes. So I need a motion for consent. Calendar C.
Did Mr. Otto want to pull?
Yeah, I wanted to pull 15.2, I believe it is now.
Right, it's in, so that's
Yes.
her. So,
Just to clarify, Mr. Otto, that's approval of purchasing and contracts report B, right? That's now in C.
Yes.
Okay. So, do we need a second?
Second.
So I move to approve consent calendar C as amended.
Which is now just 15.1.
Okay, so the motion is for consent calendar C. Was there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
we
Discussion.
had-
He pulled an
Sorry, discussion.
So I'm particularly interested in item 2 under this item, which has to do with the award of a leaseback construction agreement for the Wilson High School Aquatic Center and Aquatic Center project using best value selection criteria established by the district, and to approve the contract with Bernard Brothers, Inc. as the best value contractor for the amount of $18,880,783.68, with the minutes of this meeting being the writing of the board awarding this agreement. That's the issue which I'm interested in. I will be voting against the approval of this construction agreement, which authorizes that money to construct this Wilson Aquatic Square without a single meeting of the school board to consider an issue about which my constituents have very, very strong views, both for and against. I'm not comfortable with the process by which this agreement comes before us today. It was my understanding that the district was seeking legal opinions as to whether the project violates Title IX, whether it meets the requirements that we provide a safe environment for our students and will keep them free from discrimination and harassment. But that apparently has not been done, and I think the district needs to do that before we can fully consider this. I also see no need to rush this decision. I understand that the state of California is expected to consider the very issues that this project raises by January of next year. At that time, the parents, I believe, are very interested in how their children are receiving an education, and it would be better taken up at a later time, sometime early in January or February of 2023.
Vice President Craighead, I would advise you to take a vote on consent calendar C, item 15.1 separately, and then call for a vote on 15.2.
Can we have further discussion, Wayne, or is the discussion concluded at this point?
I would advise that we vote on 15.1, and then Ms. Craighead can open 15.2 for further discussion.
So do I need a new motion for just 15.1?
Let's
Let's
remotion
start, okay.
15.1.
So I need a motion for 15.1, approval of finance report C.
Which is the, just to clarify, which is the finance report that President Kerr has recused herself from?
Yes.
Okay. So I move to approval of finance report C.
Second.
Any discussion on that item, 15.1?
I am confused about where we are, and I think the reason I'm confused is because what used to be 14.2 is now 15.1. Am I correct in that?
No, 15.1 is the same, finance report C.
What, yeah, here, I don't know if this will help you. What we're voting on now does not include the item that you spoke to. So we've separated out these two items. So we are currently just voting on this one, and it doesn't include the item.
Either one of these items. The reason I thought I might be confused is because under what used to be 14.2, there are subtopics 1 and 2. And when you say it's 15.2, I think Ms. Kerr has a conflict on the second one.
I have conflict on both. That's
Pardon?
why they were together. 15.2,
Okay.
14.2 was moved to 15.2.
Okay, and so now we're voting on 15.1?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay.
So I have made a motion to approve item 15.1, which President Kerr has recused herself from.
Yes, and we have a second. And so is there any further discussion on item 15.1?
Which does not include the item that Board Member Otto has pulled.
Correct. That is correct. So shall I do a roll call vote just to keep it, yes, okay. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Benitez?
Aye.
Mr. Otto?
I
And I vote aye. So item 15.1 passes 4-0 with one recusal. Now I'll move to item 15.2. So I need a motion for 15.2, which is the purchasing and contracts report,
And I am still recusing from this item, just to be clear.
to be clear. Thank you.
So I move to approve item 15.2 on the amended agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, and so this is the one that you spoke to earlier. So we've heard your statements. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I see Mr. Miranda is up on the podium. So, two questions, Mr. Miranda. One, a process of review and approval that my understanding has to happen for this particular item, and if you can explain the overall process as to why we're voting on this recommendation today, in lieu of this item still needing to be reviewed at the state level. That's my first question.
Sure thing. And I'm going to take one step back as well, just to speak to our process for leaseback contractor selections. So it's customary in our process for us to have general contractors and leaseback contractors to compete at two different levels. So first, they compete to land on a pre-qualified contractor pool, which we have 10 pre-qualified leaseback builders on. Then on a project-by-project basis, we put out RFPs, requests for proposals, by which interested leaseback contractors from that pre-selected pool are able to compete at a second level, right? So we put out the project parameters, the scope of work, the budgets, a number of different criteria methods, and so forth, and then our rating scale, right? So it's pretty transparent as well. And we rate based on a number of different factors, including price, experience, the project team, their specific experience with us, local hiring practices, and a host of other categories. With respect to this particular project, we put out an RFP. 7 of the pre-qualified contractors on this particular pool bid on this particular project. Bernard's Brothers was actually the selected contractor. They fit the bill and just checked every one of those boxes and really demonstrated they're ready to perform this type of work for us. The specific action, now getting to your question, Dr. Benitez, the specific action before us is really to just select this specific contractor to provide pre-construction and construction services on this particular project. It's not to approve the specific design per se, right? We're still finalizing designs on any one of these particular projects, including the Wilson Aquatic Center project. We're required to go through the state architect's office for submittal, review, and approvals. Also required to go through the health department and the California Department of Education, all 3 state agencies, and 3 approvals that we'll secure before starting construction work on this particular project. The reason we have this contract before us this evening, timing-wise, is, and it's also customary for us to bring leaseback contractors on board relatively early in the process, and that's the case, again, with this particular project. It would allow us to engage with Bernard's Construction and allow them to also further engage with our project architect to make some final modifications and suggestions prior to submitting plans to the state architect for review. Also allows us to engage with them based on their expertise to start some early work as what we call pre-construction work. So that would be things like project scheduling, project estimating, which is super important these days, right? With the bid climate being what it is, the market being what it is, we will likely seek estimating services on a number of different occasions on this particular project as well.
Thank you, Mr. Miranda. My follow-up question is actually now a 2-part question based on the last bit of information that you shared. So I actually technically have 3 questions, but I'll combine the 2 into the second question. So first one should be quick, if I understood this correctly. So this Wilson design specifically has not yet gone to the state architect for review and approval.
That's correct.
Right. Let me pause on the second part of that question because I would like to ask Mr. Otto clarification. Mr. Otto, is your thinking for us to table this item until it goes through these 3 review processes that Mr. Miranda described?
Mr. Miranda's testimony raised another question for me, and that is there any intention to bring this back to the board for any approvals, this project, back at all for any construction?
It's very customary for us to come back to the board with an additional approval once we secure subcontractor bids.
Once what?
Once we secure bids from subcontractors.
Yeah. I'm, as you can tell from my comments, very interested in the design issues. And I want to make sure that there's an opportunity, which I don't think has really been provided yet, to have a hearing or comments about the design. And I don't have any assurances that it's going to come back to this board for that, do I?
We've presented the design to the board on a number of occasions. We held stakeholder meetings on design input sessions from a number of different stakeholders, parents and students and so forth. Invited the high school communities from each respective comprehensive high school as well. Really the feedback we secured via those sessions have helped us inform this revised design. We've made material changes to the design as well. So the design is well on its way and really ready to submit to the state architect next month.
Is there any reason why we shouldn't wait for the state architect to make the changes, excuse me, not the state architect, but the state departments to make their decisions about the issues that are before them now that are raised by this project, not raised directly by this project, but would include the issues that are with this project?
It would jeopardize our construction start date on the project.
By a month, 2 months?
Quite a bit more. So historically, we like starting these type of projects that are pretty disruptive to school operations over summer stretches. This project's already been delayed 1 full calendar year. We're on track to start this upcoming summer. Waiting for actual state approval, state architect approval, CDE approval, health department approval before engaging in the services of contractor would likely jeopardize a summer start date on this project.
I'd like to ask now the second part of my second question, Mr. Miranda. Thank you for the clarification on that, and thank you for the clarification, Mr. Otto. So these three entities that this still has to go through may in fact provide information and or feedback that ultimately would still have to be taken into account before quote unquote final design that would lead to then construction, right? In other words, either the state architect or what were the other two entities? Mr.
California Department of Ed
CDE,
and Health Department.
Health Department may either have questions or need additional information and or may not approve as currently submitted, and then we would still have to take those things into account for before initiating the construction of the project, correct?
Certainly, and absolutely customary in our planning and design process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, so the motion is to approve the purchasing and contracts report C. I'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Benitez?
Aye.
Mr. Otto?
Nay.
And I vote aye. So that passes 3 in favor with 1 no and 1 recusal. Madam President, I gladly hand this meeting back to you.
Thank you, Vice President Craighead. I appreciate that. We're going to move on to item 16, staff report, which is our strategic planning update. Dr. Brown. And Dr. Brown, thank you for taking the helm while Superintendent Baker is away on representing the district well somewhere else. So thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure, and we have a wonderful team here. I'm pleased this evening to invite Viva Mogi, Director of Strategic Programs and Policy Development, and Dr. Lucy Salazar, Director of Equity, Engagement, and Partnerships, back for sharing around our strategic plan. I just want to comment as they're beginning that they have really taken the helm in the planning with a core team who has supporting our effort as we work to envision 2035 for our students, our adults, and our community. So thank you so much, Ms. Mogi and Dr. Salazar, for your report.
Thank you for that introduction. Board members, senior staff, and members of the community, thank you for allowing me to present tonight. I am also thrilled to be co-leading this work with Dr. Salazar to establish our strategic plan, alongside with the team here today and staff, family members, students, and community members. Since I was last here in July, we've been very busy gathering as much input from our LBUSD community to hear how we can reimagine education here in LBUSD. I will kick off this presentation providing some background on what we are doing, context of this work, and our process to establish a strategic plan. This school year, we have been tasked to establish a long-term vision and a strategic plan. Through an equity-centered human design process, we will establish 4 products. The first is a graduate portrait. A graduate portrait is a clear and ambitious description of what the community wants its students to know, and be able to do in order to prepare them in their lives and careers. Specifically, we're asking the knowledge, skills, and dispositions and mindset all graduates will possess that are oriented towards the future. We are intentionally engaging our community, so we'll represent the community's aspirations for their children. Then we will build a similar portrait for our adults. And when we talk about adults, we're talking about all of our staff, not just our classroom teachers and administrators, but our operations and business staff to fit this portrait. We ask the community what knowledge, skills, and mindsets do adults need to directly support our graduate portrait elements. If we want all of these elements to be true for our adults and students and graduates, what must we change in our system for our support our adults and our graduates here? And so that's also our third product, which is our system portrait. And finally, we already have our great core values here at this district, but through this process, we may edit our core values to support all of this work. And just quickly, a description of our vision. That will be one of the things that's going to come out. This is our guiding idea. The vision works as a horizon point for the organization to all move collectively. And then the next part will be our strategic plan, which is a short-term 3 to 5 year action plan, which will have clear goals, progress measures, and also priorities and roles and resources that we will be investing in. Here's a visual of the vision elements that we're going to be coming out. As mentioned, a systems portrait that will support and lead us to the graduate portrait, adult portrait, and overall, we'll be talking a lot about our core values as well. We cannot get to this collected vision and plan without some dedicated individuals who have committed themselves to be part of a core team and guiding coalition. The core team is comprised of staff from across various departments here. They meet every week with our consultants, Prospect Studios, which you've all met, and plan these design meetings and facilitate community engagement meetings. The Guiding Coalition is our design team. They are a diverse group of over 80 people who spend 3 weekends, Friday evenings and Saturday all-day sessions, design sessions, where they explore into the future, go on learning journeys, listen to our communities, and create a draft portraits that I just described earlier. They are comprised of staff, students, members, family members, community leaders, board members, and anyone who represents who we would define part of our LBUSD community. And finally, our broader community, where we bring back all these design products back to them to give us additional feedback, more input, so then the Guiding Coalition can actually reiterate and kind of build the final product in the end. And this is an image that was shared shared at the beginning of this process with all these events and most of you all actually had participated in the needs finding is their very first step. And then we centered our work around our students. So we kicked off with our phase 1 process of what we call our vision creation and discovery through a student summit. And then that included also our first Guiding Coalition meetings. We're in the process of going through many different learning journeys that Dr. Salazar is going to describe and our community input sessions. Before I do bring up Dr. Salazar, we want to actually be able to also share that this process will end in the spring with the strategic planning process. And here we'll be able to showcase a video that was created by the Marketing and Media Services Department, showing you what we've been doing, the number of people and thoughts that have come through, and also the number of Post-its that we've been using to share what we've been doing in the community.
What I'm experiencing today and what I'm observing today is just a really nice opportunity to step back from our day-to-day work and to think about what we want our district to be in 2035 when our current kindergarten students will be graduating from the system. The process that we're going through takes us through the opportunity not just to live in the current work that we're doing, but to really think boldly and differently about what the future could be for our students.
And it's going to be listening deeply and thoughtfully before we begin to put together what a revisioning of education for the community we actually serve, not the community we think we serve, tells us. And I think that that's going to be a very powerful, transformative, equity-centered process that's actually going to produce something meaningful that our community will feel.
I felt it was really, honestly, it was out of the blue, but it was nice hearing that the district actually does want to hear people's voices. I think that's important.
What stood out to me the most is the fact that I can really see that the district is trying to improve on inclusivity and actually hearing us out. We're actually being heard.
It feels great knowing that someone actually cares about what we think and it's going to help shape our district.
I feel like a lot of high schoolers can feel misunderstood, and like just to be able to give that advice and see what you guys are all gonna do with it is like interesting.
I think it's a great thing that they're having a student input for the district's choices in the next 5 years. So far, my experience has been really welcoming and great.
It makes me feel like my opinion matters and that it's not only what adults think, it's also what the kids think.
It was very fun, I will say that. If they keep this up, I think it might just go perfectly.
So I get to then have Dr. Salazar talk about how perfectly it's gonna go.
Thank you. So thank you, Viva. No pressure. So good evening, everyone. Tonight, and to those of you that are watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching and tuning in. So I'm here tonight to share an update on the process and the engagement efforts that we have taken so far. We're also going to share what's next, what are our next steps as we continue to move forward in this process and answer any questions you might have at the very end. So Viva shared some background, context, and information on how we will accomplish this long-term idea of Vision 2035. And it'll include, like she said, our graduate portrait, our adult portrait, our systems portrait, as well as a set of core values. But I'd like to share who and how we have engaged during this first phase, and specifically how we've identified through the Guiding Coalition and how we are engaging with the broader community. Oh, so sorry. Where'd it go? Back. Nope. I promise I know how to use this, just not right now. Okay, here we go. All right, so here we have in our first phase, in mid-October, in late September, we held a 3-day student summit. And it was an opportunity where we brought our middle schools and our high schools students. Each school brought anywhere between 20 to 25 students, and we elicited their input. And so during this day, during Student Summit, our core team members were docents, and they led students through a variety of stations. And docents through the stations were able to engage with students. And it was really nice to see our district staff that leads in many ways, they're all leaders, be able to engage with students in such a great way. So we want to thank our core team members who that day were docents. And so docents led students through stations that started with taking a trip into the future. And students were able to view a slide deck and really consider what might the future be. And it prompted students to consider their readiness for this said future, right? There was a lot of things that made students go, oh, didn't consider that. So it was really nice to have students and adults go, ooh. There were some really interesting things that were shared during this futures slide. And so looking into the future then primed them, and it primed them to generate ideas for what might a future graduate need in order to thrive. And they also considered, so what knowledge, what skills, what dispositions or mindsets will adults need to have as well if they are going to be supportive to the graduates? So how students were able to generate ideas is because, as Viva shared, we asked them to tell us initially a story of an adult in their life who has had a positive impact and has helped them be successful. So the summit was able to generate great input, great ideas from our students. And you see on this slide that we had over 750 students that attended, and we were able to have, and Post-its will be, you'll hear us say often about Post-its, and each color means something special and something different and unique. And we had over 3,900 Post-its, and each one was a new idea and a new input. And those students that shared their stories of those adults that made an impact, we had 559 stories shared with us. Oop. I promise I know what I'm doing. So then in mid-October, when we got together, we convened the Guiding Coalition. And again, this was the design team. And this group of about 80 to 90 people, which consisted of both instructional and non-instructional staff, parents, community members, business, and our partners in the city of Long Beach. It included site administrators, our labor partners, and the best part of the whole Guiding Coalition was our students that were in attendance. And we met for a day and a half, and we gained an understanding of what's to come and what can be possible, but also what might we need to plan for and consider. So during this Guiding Coalition, it was a day filled where we gained a deeper understanding of what the future is holding for us, that horizon that we have yet to see, and more importantly, the way we all engage and really were able to ground ourselves on what it is that we are trying to accomplish. So during phase one, still in phase one, we also is where we began to outreach our broader community. And this is where our broader community was presented with 5 different ways in which they can engage and generate input that we need. And so here you have that we had an opportunity for our staff, right? We often consider site staff, but we also recognize through this whole process that there's a lot of supportive staff for our students. And so we were able to create what we call static displays, where it was self-led with prompts for our staff. And we created these static displays in a variety of places and spaces across the district. So we had one here in this very same room for those staff members that whose workplace is the board building, but we also held one with our friends and staff members at the TRC as well as our facilities sites. And we were able to capture a little bit over 700 ideas and thoughts from 85 participants. We also held what we call guided Zoom sessions, and we held 4 different sessions so that it was available to our broader community. And we had over 80 participants during that time as well. We also have an asynchronous survey, a standard survey so that our broader community, through the help and support of the MMS department, was able to put it out on social media and list it on our webpage. And through that asynchronous survey, we had 317 responses. But some of our favorite ways to engage is in person, and we were also able to go and reach out and outreach and engage with our parent groups. So we have here listed some of them. Some of them you are familiar with, our DLAC, IONA, our Pacific Islander Education Voyage Group, DCAC, but we also engaged in person, specifically with our staff at OCIPD, with our business operations department, our business office. We had an opportunity to meet with parents of LBUSD students that are residents at Century Villages at Cabrillo. We went out to our monthly meeting and we met with our parents during Sankofa Parent Village. And today, we were at middle schools. So we were at Franklin this afternoon with Viva. So that was super fun to be with students. And our biggest surprise, we have to learn from our students, right? And we initially said, oh, well, let's do some at sites with students. And our students said, oh, we got this. We're good. We got this. What did you need? We'll be able to lead this effort. We were ready to be side by side with them, have an adult. And they said, no, I think this will be fine. We've done this. We can do this. And so our high school students stepped up and they were able to lead their own engagements at their own sites. They even reached out and supported our middle school students that needed additional support. And so they've just really have, of course, risen to the occasion and are demonstrating their great leadership skills. And they are students who are also participating in Guiding Coalition. Where we are currently is those of us that are on the Guiding Coalition, we are embarking on a learning journey. And it's always great for the Guiding Coalition to be able to take these learning journeys because it supports our role as members of a design team. So members are encouraged to take part in one or more of these opportunities. And these are some of the opportunities that are being offered to Guiding Coalition members so that, again, as part of the design team, there's a certain role that they are fulfilling. And so we have in-person learning journeys, and we are, the week after we return, or others return from Thanksgiving, there's We're going out of state. We're going to be able to visit Portland Public Schools, specifically interested in looking at the Center for Black Student Excellence. They have an innovation studio lab, as well as listen to what they're doing around racial equity and social justice, and how are they engaging with community partners in this work. They've gone through a strategic planning process, and we are ready to learn and to listen and see what they can share with us. We are also holding virtual learning journeys at microsites, and these are in many ways self-led. They get those of us in Guiding Coalition are able to click as many and go as deep and learn as much as we can of these sites. And then we also are hosting live virtual visits, and these are some of the sites that are offered for these live virtual visits. So you have the 5th day experience that already happened, and this is at a Butler Tech, which is in Ohio, and we've learned some great things about some innovative ways in which their high school students are experiencing their day and their week. I'll just say that. Vista Innovation and Design Academy, also known as VITA. And then we have Patino School of Entrepreneurship in Fresno. And then we have Design 39 Campus that is found in San Diego County. And then we are also partnering and will be able to visit virtually thanks to the partnership we have with the city manager's office as well as other departments with the city of Long Beach to hear about what they're doing in innovative ways. And again, the learning journeys and the purpose for them is to provide opportunities to kind of step outside of what we're doing. Sometimes we're so close to things, right? It's always nice to step out and learn and see and get new perspective and see new things that will help our daily context and be introduced to innovative and future-focused educational models. So let me share with you what's next. So what's next is we're going to meet soon. Guiding Coalition will convene again on December 2nd, Friday, and all day on Saturday, December 3rd. And all the input that has been generated, our partners at Prospect Studios are taking all that input. The nice thing about having this collaboration and the consultants of Prospect Studios is we get to participate, be participants in this process. It's a harder thing when you're designing and trying to make this process move along, and also try to participate. So it's a nice partnership with Prospect Studios. And so as a result of our Guiding Coalition, we'll be able to come back out to the community and do more community engagement, because during our second Guiding Coalition, we'll have prototypes for all the portraits. So what might it be? A prototype for graduate portrait, a prototype of the adult portrait, and we'll go back out to our community and say, okay, did we get this right? So we'll be closing the feedback loop with our community and engage in a different way, not just with by virtue of asking for their input, but also getting feedback from them. And did we get it right? And where did we get it wrong? And so we look forward to that opportunity to getting back out into the community. So we are just wondering if you have any questions.
Colleagues, any questions on the process? Mr. Otto.
I wasn't quite fast enough in writing down the places that you did your live virtual visits. I did get that the Patino School of Entrepreneurship was in Fresno. How about
in Fresno, yes.
Yeah, and where was the 5th day experience?
The 5th day experience is at Butler Tech. It's in Ohio.
And how about for the Vista Design Innovation and Design Academy? Is that Vista, California?
That's in Vista, yes.
Okay. And the Design 39 campus?
It's in San Diego County. It is, I'm sorry? It's in Vista as well, yes. Thank you.
It's in where?
Mm-hmm. Vista as well. Mm-hmm.
Vista as well, okay. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, we look forward again to being out in the community, and we look forward to being back and sharing more updates.
Mr. Miller.
I think that re-engagement with the community piece the second time around is going to be the most important,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think that is exactly what the community members that have come to this meeting have asked in regards to the decisions that we're making. Are we making the right ones, and have we gotten it right?
Mm-hmm.
With that, can you speak to what those engagement sessions will look like a little bit further?
Well, one big difference will be that right now the engagement sessions have been about collecting input, right? So it's just let us have your input, and then there isn't a back and forth as much, because we're just really trying to generate the input so that there is an understanding of what are not only the needs, but what are the hopes and dreams, if you will, through the prompts that were part of the community sessions. the next round of community engagement, we will be asking for feedback. There will be some input that we will request, but we're really coming back to the community with prototypes, saying, okay, this is, as a result of all that first session of community engagement, this is what has, this is a prototype, and that will be generated during Guiding Coalition. It won't be anyone alone doing it. It will be the Guiding Coalition will be able to develop these prototypes for what a graduate portrait could be, for what an adult portrait should be, and then we'll have those prototypes to share with our community and say, are we on the right track? What did we miss? So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but that's the biggest difference. One is we're just generating ideas for the development of these portraits, but now we're coming back out and saying, okay, this is the prototype. Are we on the right track?
Right. And I assumed such, using the vision and strategic plan process document that you gave us, you used the term titled the messy middle.
Yes.
Which, which I do appreciate, because when you're, let's call it drafting paper, and you put together that first draft, it's supposed to have marks with the red pen. It's supposed to. It's not supposed to be perfect. And there's not supposed to be anything taken personal from the corrections that were made by whomever the person was that made the revisions. Same thing to be said with this process, where I would hope that when we talk about our portraits that we'll be giving to the community, that they will get a hands-on opportunity to make some reconstruction, and we will be presenting that back to them for a third time, showing their revisions.
Absolutely, that's our goal as well. So thank you for that. And that's the goal of this whole process, that that anyone that is involved can see their input in the prototypes that we bring. So that's one of our goals, as well as the feedback that we get generated from the messy middle afterwards into the community engagement sessions.
Thank you.
Dr. Benitez, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And you probably know where I'm going to go with this, Dr. Salazar. I particularly love that we heard from over 750 students, right? At those students.
Plus.
Yes. Over. I said over, 750 students. So we have referenced this process in the last few board meetings. Appreciate the overview, right, of our entire process. I want to talk a little bit more about phase one.
Sure.
And I was one of the parents that received the communication about filling out the open-ended survey, right? And I think one of the questions, and I heard this question both in the board workshop space, in the student visioning space, and at the Guiding Coalition space, and saw it again with this survey, a digital survey, a virtual survey that went out. And it was about what we would like students to know and be able to do, right? So I saw that we had 317 surveys. Dr. Salazar, was that sent out to all LBUSD families?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
So I was under the impression, I could be wrong, that survey was either about to close or already closed. Is that the case?
It closed this morning, yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering, given that we have 66,000 students and their families and guardians and caregivers, if there are any thoughts, Mr. Grayson got your attention on this one, to either extend that survey, reopen the survey, and or provide other opportunities in phase one before we get to that second phase of sort of the two-way communication. Because for many folks, I believe, they may not have understood sort of this link, and now that we're giving an overview of this and we can reference this, there may be an opportunity for more of our students, stakeholders, community members, parents, caregivers to think about filling out that survey. And again, my concern is that although we have wonderful participation from our LBUSD students and other stakeholder groups, and particularly those that are participating in the Guiding Coalition work, that we should have a lot more LBUSD households and families participating in the survey. So don't have to answer that now, but I would really encourage us to either reopen or extend that survey because we have tonight as an additional reference point of information.
Thank you for that. It looks like.
Because we are already scheduled for the December meeting, we are hoping for the phase 2 to be another opportunity, not just to give feedback, but it will be an opportunity to provide additional input if they missed phase 1. And also, our consultants have already been kind of reading through all of this, not just the survey, but the inputs that have been coming in from the in-person engagement. And they've said after, working with many different districts that there's so much depth through every response that we've been getting that they're seeing so much more kind of array of kind of thoughts and input that's been coming in from this community already. And so we do feel really good about the numbers, to be honest, but I understand that we will need to spend more time engaging directly in the community. We want to spend that time. And so phase 2 will happen in January. So that gives us actually a little bit more time to do some intentional planning. And so we're hopeful that we can kind of show a different result in phase 2.
So I'm going to push back a little bit,
Okay.
Viva. Because this issue has come up, the concern has come up for many of these opportunities to engage our communities. And I brought this up for those of us that were here for our board workshop. When the outside consulting group came in and said, we're going to do community engagement, I was that guy again that said, hey, we don't have a history of engaging with all of our communities. And so, I asked, what's going to be different here? What are we going to do given the short, and I appreciate the timeline that we're having. My concern here is that we are getting this great presentation after the first phase closed for community members. So folks that are seeing this for the first time and are getting a better understanding of how important and valuable it was, I understand there's additional opportunities. But again, this is an opportunity for us as a district, foundationally, to pivot and recommit and reaffirm our commitment to not just engaging with those valuable stories that we already have, the deep input that we already have, but I think all of us would agree, and I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, that 317 surveys, right, for folks that are not going to be able to participate in the other opportunities, I do think we can do better than that. And I think our intent should always be to provide as many opportunities before we move on to second and third phases. And I'm raising it in the spirit of this was a concern that I raised when we had that board workshop, that we have the same folks, and those are great folks, right? But we've received information in the last couple board meetings about how important it is to lift up the Black community's voice, the Black student voice. We're going to get some data tonight on our English learner and emerging bilingual community. So if we're going to present an overview of a process which is rooted in community engagement, and we've closed the first phase of that initial opportunity, then I do think we need to rethink and reconsider before moving on to the next phase, how we build that community engagement out before moving further along. Just my thoughts for consideration.
And I just want to say one last thing. I'll go back to this. So I understand what you're saying, and I understand how 317 responses particularly sounds like it's not reflective. I don't think it's even a point in comparison to the total students enrolled. But we also have, so it's the 317 responses in conjunction with the other Zoom sessions that we've had. So it's all compiled, and it's not, the data point is not just the 317 responses, it's all the engagement. Maybe what we could do is follow up with, so what was the engagement for each of the specific in-person and the student-led? We can provide that because it'll be way more than 317. We were just reporting on how many of our broader community members chose to do an asynchronous survey. But just like they chose to be to complete the asynchronous survey, there were others that participated in the other community engagement opportunities. So I'd just like to kind of clarify that because we don't have responses from just 317. There's many more, but we're just reporting the numbers of surveys completed.
Understood.
But thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Craighead.
Well, I just want to kind of build on your point where the number doesn't reflect the kind of outreach that we were hoping to have when we started this process. And I'm just wondering if it was just an online opportunity for parents. You mentioned you received a survey. Was that something that was just delivered to our parents through Parent View or something like that? And would it be possible for us to employ different outreach measures? Maybe each school campus can make a computer available with maybe somebody to help. Not everybody is computer literate. Not everybody is involved in social media, that type of thing. It seems like we would benefit from maybe varying our methods and using more than just an online survey.
And I think maybe what will be helpful is if we share overall thoughts and how we generated those thoughts, and that they were collected through the variety of community engagement. Because again, I keep going back to like the student-led, that we had quite a bit of students engaged, and I would say pretty much at most of our comprehensive high schools, there was a student-led engagement session where thoughts were collected for each of the different components of the vision, which would include the graduate portrait, adult portrait, values, as well as dispositions for adults and the such. So I think that I appreciate the feedback, because I think what I'm hearing is that you would like to know also total thoughts, and we'll do that.
And we can open up to try to just at least have the survey open till the end of the week. But we are in the process of transcribing and theming over thousands of input that has come in. But if we would like, if that's the request, then we can open it up and have until the end of the week.
I would leave it to my colleagues to chime in. I mean, I've shared my thoughts.
Dr. Brown, could you share, I know you shared with me in our meeting before, your experience with Wilson High School students, because I think it speaks to a couple of things, including their being comfortable with asking for what they think they need. So if you could share that experience just for some additional context of some interactions that you've had and the team has had.
Absolutely, and thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to both of you for the work that you're leading. So in addition to the 317 responses we're talking about, we're also talking about really specific feedback from 750 students, which I don't want to go unmentioned. And I had an experience around the student engagement that speaks to the standard that our students are holding us to with respect to the type of feedback that they hoped and expect to give. A group of students from Wilson High School who had participated in the Student Summit went back, spoke to their principal, and said that they had hoped to be asked additional questions, that they were holding on to information that they wanted to share, and where was the forum for them to share that. And so I had the opportunity to go myself with my colleague Viva Mogi to Wilson High School, meet with 15 students, and was able to engage with them for an hour around the things that they wished they would have shared. They gave us some really good feedback on the process that we will use in future engagement efforts. They basically described to us how they expect to be considered in the engagement, and then they asked us when we would be following up with them. Because they didn't just want to tell us things, and this was important. They didn't just want to tell us things, they wanted us to do something with the information. So Viva and I committed to, after winter break return, to share with them how we have continued to engage in this process. And so while I always appreciate certainly your comments, Dr. Benitez, and the idea that more engagement is always going to give us more information, I really want to highlight the ways in which the type of engagement that we are doing in this effort is really steering us towards the core of what we need to hear. And more of the same is not going to help us more, but more detail from people who have never participated before is really going to guide us in the direction. And so I think that's the process that we are moving towards. To keep the survey open until the end of the week sounds great, but I'm quite certain as phase 2 begins, there are going to be additional opportunities to further engage with those who have not had opportunity to participate. And I really hope that those who have had opportunity to participate are going to add on, because that's the conversation that we don't always get to in our engagement processes.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I appreciate that. And I want to, it was open-ended, not all of the above or either or. I said it was either to reopen, extend, and or provide other opportunities for engagement, right? Whatever those look like, because you did have a chance to share all the additional rich. So I don't want to diminish that, but just sort of expand, how do we do more of that, right? Thank you.
And if we could shed a little bit of like what Dr. Brown has said, today our visit to Franklin Middle School was with our newcomer EL students. It was very different experience. I'm glad I didn't go alone. Dr. Salazar was able to lead it with Ms. Hernandez, and that was really exciting because I don't think that they were really, had an opportunity to even talk about it. And the teacher was very clear that, you've been here for 2 years. It's very different from someone who's lived here in Long Beach their entire lives, and tell us your experience being here. Students that decided to lead their own engagement in their high school, they said, we don't want to just go to our clubs, our leadership groups. We actually want to go to different classes because those voices are not everyone's voice. The students won't participate if we send out a survey through Canvas or if we just tell certain students to take it, because that's not the voice of the students. And so they asked their we actually reached out with support of the level offices to ask the principal if they can take a class, like a day of the class, and they went into different classes, like where diverse students will already be there to be able to get their input. And so students and we all did work together through a Zoom session. What will it take for you to feel like your school, your students, like everyone is being represented, and they were able to share that. And so we were there to just support them and advocate on their behalf to see if they can do that. And so we hope that when we say that the engagement's there, hopefully we'll come back with more of the numbers and also have the surveys open. We kind of did not paint the picture for you today of the type of engagement that's been happening, but we've been feeling really good. And some of the community members too said, this input phase is great, but actually could you come back to us because we're not ready for this yet. And so some of the Kamai communities have asked us, and we're going to actually do a rebuilding exercise with them, with their parents. They did try to take the survey, but they said this feels still too, we are not feeling connected to this. And so we're going to be going back and rebuilding a relationship. So as Dr. Brown said, we are feeling really hopeful about this process because we've been able to have that first touch point, and we're pretty confident and also excited to keep going through this journey. This is just not the end point, but we have taken your feedback and we're really excited about it. Thank you for always having a critical eye on this, because I think it helps us do better. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for all of the work that you continue to do. I know you think about it all the time, in addition to, this isn't the only task on your plate, but really grateful for the way that you are very intentionally trying to engage with all of us in the process. So, and shout out to Mr. Itzen on the social media stuff. I have seen those invitations to participate on all of the platforms, and continuing to get the word out as best as possible. So thank you so much, Dr. Salazar and Ms. Mogi. Okay, we're going to move on to our staff report 16.2, student outcomes, multilingual learners. Dr. Brown, I believe you're going to kick us off again.
Just very briefly, thank you so much. We are continuing this evening with the commitments made to our data monitoring calendar with a presentation around supporting multilingual learners. And Dr. Kale and her team are here. When you hear the work that they're describing, you will think that they are speaking about an office of 40 or 50. They are a small but mighty office who have done a lot of work. So I'll pass to Dr. Kale. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So it was a little more than a year ago that we were here and we presented on a newly established multilingual office. I don't know if you remember that, but it was a little bit more than a year ago. At that time, we talked about we were working on new reclassification criteria, and we said we've got this test called iReady that we're going to be using, right? So this is where we were about a year ago. We did a large feasibility study to try to figure out where and how we could place our new dual immersion sites. We were working on a Khmer language program and professional development to meet the needs of multilingual learners. So that's kind of where we were the last time we came to you on this subject, and so tonight we want to give you a little bit of an update on where things have progressed. So first I'd like to just mention that delivering the majority of the presentation tonight will be Angelica Gonzalez, our director, and she oversees the multilingual office. And alongside her, she works very closely with Alma Black. Alma is new to us this year, and she's the curriculum leader for the multilingual office. She's a former principal from Tincher and Franklin, and she supports professional development in support of our multilingual learners. She supports our dual immersion programs and our world language program. And in partnership with her, Martha Ensminger, who is not new to us and has actually been leading for many, many years centrally. She has many years in supporting our parents of English learners, overseeing our migrant education program, and then she is really the person who helps us stay in compliance with what are the expectations. So that is the team that has been doing this work. So tonight, Angie's just going to give you a quick update on reclassification criteria, and then she's going to go a little bit deeper into elevation and that launch. And that grew out of our need for more real-time student data, so she's going to tell you a little bit more about that and what else it's offered us. She'll talk a little bit about our site EL support, including professional development and coaching. That's happening at the sites. And then we'll talk about some level office EL collaboration examples. So I'm going to turn it over to Angie.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be with you in person. I'm with you every board meeting via YouTube, but I can get my laundry done, other things. But it's nice to be here with you all. So I'm going to begin with some commentary. One, with the recognition that there is so much more work to do. That what we're presenting today is a work in progress. We're going to focus on the progress and we're going to celebrate the progress, but understanding that we are not there yet. The second commentary is a recognition that I'm representing the work of lots of people. I'm representing the work of the multilingual office, like Christy said. I'm representing the work of multiple offices within our department, the English Language Arts office, the science office, the special ed inclusion office, course management office, all those live within OCIPD, and their work is represented tonight. Also, the collaboration with sites across the district, and of course, our friends from the research department and our friends from the level offices. So I'm here alone, but this work is not my own. And I say that not just to recognize them and their important work and contributions, but really to share that we are in a very different place than we were a couple years ago, where the work of supporting English learners lived in an office on one person's desk a couple years before that. And so it really has become and grown into exactly where it needs to be, which is the shared responsibility across our sites, across our departments, across our district. So that's just a recognition of that. So thank you for allowing me that commentary. So we'll begin with EL reclassification. Every year, you're going to see, probably for a while, EL reclassification come across your desks because one thing or another changes. We are constantly trying to get it right. Last year, we brought it to you with iReady. This year, in the beginning of the year, we brought it to you with a couple revisions, not to the local criteria, which we decided was iReady, but really to the format of the document. Why? Because we're listening to our parents who are saying, what is all this criteria stuff? Can you explain it to us? And I'll show you an example of how we changed it. And we're also listening to our counselors and our principals who are saying, we don't understand the steps. So some clarity in that. But really the exciting thing that this year's updated reclassification criteria brought was the alternate reclassification criteria, which means that our students with significant cognitive disabilities who participate in the alternate LPAC. So the LPAC is the English Language Assessment Proficiency Assessment in California. That's what LPAC stands for. And last year we piloted the alternate LPAC for that small group of students that have significant cognitive disabilities that participated. So because there is a new assessment that can measure their English proficiency, we also created a new classification criteria. So that is something we're super excited about. True collaboration with our friends in OSSS that I failed to mention earlier. I apologize for that. And all of that is posted in English, Spanish, and Khmer on our website. So all of the criteria. So let me show you some of the changes, structural changes we made to the document. Again, not the criteria, but the document. So you'll notice that we laid it out by steps to make it really easy for sites. And we said to step 1, step 2 is really the district. We determine when the student has met those 2 things, and we're going to let you know. Then step 3 and step 4 is the responsibility of the site. We made it very clear. I put an arrow on step 3 because we clarified who is the site reclassification team. It's not just one person on the site who decides the fate of the student. It really is a team decision. And so we listed who there is on the team. And for students with an IEP, it is the IEP team that weighs in on that decision. So we wanted to be sure we included that. Something else we added that we're super excited about, because it's something we heard from our DLAC parents is, well, you know, we go and sign a document, we're reclassifying, but we don't really truly understand the process. So we are providing additional guidance for sites. We are training every single counselor right after Thanksgiving on a couple things related to reclassification, but also on what should that parent consultation truly look like. We're providing that guidance, and we are highlighting this video. So a couple years, well, maybe not a couple, maybe 4 years ago, Christy, probably when she was in the research office, brought to you all the proposal to purchase a personalized LPAC result video for every student in their home language. And what the video does is it says, hello, parent of Angie Gonzalez. I am going to narrate your daughter Angie's LPAC results. And it takes them through visuals and pictures. You can see a screenshot there. This screenshot is of a student. It has the score that they earned, has a scale at the bottom that shows relative scale of what score they received. This one is in Spanish, and it's for written expression. It also tells them how much more the student needs to accomplish proficiency. So what we've done is, what we're going to do is share these with counselors. They already have access, but we're going to remind them. Parents get access through them through Parent View at the conclusion of, as they get their LPAC results, they also get a link to the video. We've done something extra though, that's super cool. Christy mentioned Elevation, and I'm gonna go into much more detail about what Elevation is, but it essentially is a platform. And what we've asked them to do, and we've asked them to do lots of things, and they have yet to say no, by the way. They figure out how to do everything. They're pretty magical. But what we asked them to do is, hey, how about on each student profile in Elevation, you link in their personalized LPAC video so everybody who supports that student knows exactly where that student is and how to support them. And they said, yeah, we think we can do that. They've told us many times, Long Beach, you're the only district that we at this point, they serve as a total side note, but they support, oh goodness, I want to say over 100 school districts, Dr. Brown, do you know? Over 100 school districts. We, by far, they told us, have the most data points in there, are asking the right questions, are pushing them to their creative limits. So we're super proud of that, that we're pushing people to their limits. So super exciting about these videos. So again, we're training counselors, we're supporting them so that they can truly have this meaningful parent consultation and celebration of the student's success as they reclassify. All right, so earlier I said that supporting multilingual learners, supporting emerging bilinguals, supporting English learners is and should be the responsibility of everyone. Every single teacher, across every single campus, across every single classroom. Because English learners are in every single classroom, and maybe not every single classroom, but definitely every single campus. And so one public commitment to uplifting multilingual learners comes in the revised understandings and expectations. Dr. Kale and Dr. Baker shared these with you earlier in this year. This summer, we revised the document to, really what it is, it's our public commitment to equity and excellence in every classroom. We're saying if all of these things, and this is the at a glance document, the document has many more pages to it. If these things happen in every single classroom, then we can say that we're providing an equitable experience for every single student. What was missing from the previous document was the uplifting of multilingual students. So you'll see just some excerpts from the document, just a couple to highlight. In U1, we called out the planning of daily supports for English learners to access the content, extend opportunities to interact in meaningful ways, and then I'm going to skip down, and we called out integrated and designated English language development. I'll do another example. In U3, it doesn't necessarily say supporting English learners, but we know that one way to support English learners every day in every class is to optimize student output, optimize the opportunity for students to produce language in written format, verbally, and that if every lesson students are producing output, maximizing output, then we're supporting English learners. So some examples of how we're intentionally calling out English learners within the document. We know that these practices are good for all kids, but necessary for English learners. And so an example of how we've uplifted. I'm going to jump into elevation in a second. This is a very simplified, oversimplified, probably visual of how the understandings and elevation support multilingual learners across all classrooms. So this is a little equation here. What we're hoping to get across is that if we get to know students, we get to know our English learners, their language abilities across those domains, and those domains are speaking, listening, reading, and writing. If we recognize and learn their unique skills, their individual needs, and their personal histories. Elevation is not going to give us our personal histories. We have to do that work. If we do that, and we add it with best practices that build teachers' instructional expertise and leverage proven methods in the activities that support ELD, then we think we can support our English learners. So that is what elevation does for us. So I'll describe elevation as a one-stop shop, and you all approved this. I don't know if you remember in June, we were super excited, so thank you for supporting us with this really important tool for us. What elevation is a one-stop shop that houses English learner data and ELD instructional resources. So I'll share two things with you today. The data dashboard that identifies English learners in each, I'll show you the district view, but then principals have the school view, teachers have their teacher view that they can then filter into their period view. It provides overall detailed language level information. It tracks student progress, reviews assessment data. Whatever we want to add to the dashboard, we can add to the dashboard as long as that data is available. I will then also share that second part. So that data dashboard speaks to getting to know your students. Who are they? The second piece, the activities dashboard, is a bank of engagement activities that support teachers and the planning for that increased language use and integrated and designated ELD. So those two parts of the equation, Elevation offered to us, and so we were super excited. All right, so the next slide I'm going to show you is there's a lot on the slide. And this wasn't meant to be this isn't meant to be a data presentation. It's more of a programmatic presentation, but I recognize I'm showing you numbers and there's going to be questions. And so I will pause after this slide. But first I want to walk through what each of those little tiles mean. So this is the first page that someone with a district view of Elevation will see. And we call this the data dashboard. We built out each of those tiles. We told Elevation, yes, we want that, or no, we don't want that. What we did is we put in actually every single student in Elevation, not just English learners. So we can access data for every single student. And that's the first tile you see. The first tile you see is LBUSD students total. So that Dr. Benitez referenced earlier is 66,180. And I bet he reviewed his slides. That's why he knew exact number. So 66,000.
Dr. Miller was just fact-checking me on that, Angie.
This is as of Friday, probably. So if the number is off, I can go into Elevation right now and give you the actual number. I think I took the screenshot on Friday. So the next tile you see, it says EO. Those are English-only students, so those are non-ELs. They were never an EL. They were never identified as a possible EL. English only. And so you see that number is 42,692 as of Friday. The next tile is ELs. Those are our English learners. 11,031. That number is growing every day because we're getting results back from initial LPACs, and I'll tell you a little bit. I'll reference a tile that tells us how many more might be added to that. The next tile are RFEP. So RFEP are students that have been reclassified. So they met that criteria I shared earlier. They met that criteria, but they met it in the last 4 years. And the state says you can reclassify once they've met the criteria, but you must monitor them for 4 years. So that's why it says monitored. So we have 3,064 students there. The next tile are RFEP fully exited, meaning these students were reclassified over 4 years ago. Okay, so we're no longer monitoring them in the same way. There's those TBDs. So those TBDs to the right, we have 42. That number shrinks every day. Pretty much every day. It goes up and down as enrollment. So when a student enrolls and the parent says on the home language survey that any language other than English was either learned first or spoken first, that triggers a TBD. So the student becomes a TBD. We don't know if they're an English learner or if they're an initial fluent student until the LPAC initial assessment is given. And then the results come in. The results, if they're not proficient, then they become an English learner, hence the EL number growing. If they are proficient, then they become an initial FEP student, which is the tile to the bottom right. Okay, that's the top line. Then we'll move down to the second line. We have newcomers. So newcomers are students that have been in a US school for 2 years or less. So it's 593 district-wide for us. Then the next tile is at risk of becoming an LTEL or a long-term English learner. So, which speaks to the tile next to that, which is long-term English learner. Long-term English learner are students that have been an English learner for, I believe, what did we decide on this year? 5 years is the 5 or more years. So really on their 6th, they're 5 years. That was a big discussion as to what the official one was. And then so at risk are students who are approaching that. So once you approach the 3rd year, now we're considering you're at risk of possibly becoming, which means we should be monitoring and intervening and supporting you with a little bit more intensity. Okay, and I already spoke to, and the last column is IFEP. IFEP are those students who parents said, yes, they speak another language, but they tested fluent, okay? So what is here in this box that I'm highlighting does not represent only English learners, and I want to be clear about that. So the next three boxes are referring to all LBUSD students. So that number is out of all, not English learners. So dual language students, we can track dual language students, track on their progress, and that's important for us as we support dual languages programs as well. So that's the total number of students in dual language across LBUSD. The number of IEP, that's across all students, 8,292. And then students on 504 plan, that's again across all LBUSD students. Okay.
Angie, can we
Yes, we're going to pause
there
right here.
just for that?
Absolutely.
And maybe Dr. C. Brown can clarify this. I see you have your laptop open. I was always under the understanding that we had 10,000 plus students on IEPs.
The number goes down as our enrollment has declined. So it rolls at around 12% of our total student enrollment. And as our student enrollment has dropped, from 75 to 72 to now 66,000, that end size of students on IEPs has also dropped, but remained at about the 12% number.
So I'm going to call you out, Dr. C. Brown, because 3 presentations ago, we were at 14%, and that we were using that 10,000 plus IEP number.
Yeah, it's 8840 as of when I just pulled it a few minutes ago.
Okay, so that changed 2,000 plus students in the last couple months?
It depends on when I pulled the data for the report.
Okay.
And some of the students that are present in our system versus students that we're accountable for but aren't necessarily present in our system. So it would depend on the data field that I used when I pulled the report.
Okay. And I'm sorry, President Kerr, that just want to make sure that I'm understanding what this is. The second one on this is, I know we do have the number just for ELs, of ELs that also have an IEP?
Correct. So by filtering the data through the dashboard, you can easily find that number, and I pulled that for you earlier, and that is 2,409.
Okay. So just so that I understand, those 2,409 are a part of the 11,031?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I will pause here for additional questions. I know there's a lot of data points that might trigger lots of questions, so.
Okay.
I will invite my colleagues to help respond to those questions as well.
All right, colleagues, questions for the team. Mr. Miller, I see your finger on the trigger. He's like.
Just a quick comment here. As first off, I think that, as you stated earlier, this is more of a programmatic presentation, less of a data presentation. But in the same token, I think that giving us these numbers give us a bit of a baseline. They let us know kind of where we are. But just for the spirit of us turning our meetings into a student outcomes focused meeting, I would hope that in future meetings, when we revisit this topic, that we'll be using data to evaluate our English language learners.
And sorry, to speak to that really quickly, we have included on every data presentation we've done so far how the EL students have done in those same metrics. So in the interest of not rehashing the exact same slides over when we went to the programs, we have included that. So we definitely have been making sure we've been tracking on our EL students, and we'll continue to do so with every data presentation.
And I understood it as such. I going into this, thought that this was going to be a hyper-focused approach. And so anyway, that's kind of where I was. Thank you.
So just on that same note, to clarify, so this dashboard is the piece that's new. This is part of Elevations that's new. We obviously have the data points to give the platform to be able to be formatted. So can you speak to how having this platform or having all of these data points either at a district level down to a classroom level help inform the work or clarify the work for individual support teams, teachers, who are specifically working towards the results that we're hoping for.
Absolutely. So at first, it gives us the data in one place. Our previous student information services, or system, we'd have to build a report, run it. There's lots of steps. It doesn't just appear right then and there. So this is hyper-focused on English learners. As a principal, when I log on, I'm going to see all the total number of English learners. I'm going to eventually start seeing some flags appear as well as a principal and a teacher. The flags are going to start meaning some things to them, and we're going to train them on that. Flags are going to mean this student needs to be monitored. So what's the monitoring? The student isn't progressing well. What's the intervention? It'll happen the same for teachers. As students aren't progressing, or when students are progressing and they're moving towards reclassification, it's going to flag that information on the dashboard. In essence, what teachers should be doing is clicking in on each of the students. When you click on each of the students, it's going to give you a much more expanded view to help you get to know the student, get to know their strengths. They all come with strengths, and get to know their areas of need so you can focus your instruction, your support, your ELD and or your differentiated instruction in those areas. And in a minute, I'll show you the additional piece, which is that second part of the equation, the strategies that Elevation also comes with to support the instructional piece. So this in itself gives teachers, principals, counselors also the ability to see all their English learners on one page. When you click on each of those tiles, it opens up and gives you the entire list. The list of each student, you click on each student, it gives you an expanded view of the student. So an ability to see your students, get to know them, know their strengths, know their needs.
Thank you. I really appreciated that you said that they are working with us to incorporate all of the data points that we think are important. I think there's a concern sometimes when we subscribe to a platform that we're locked into the things that they out there think are important. So I just wanted you to clarify that point, that as we find information that we think is necessary to flag a student for intervention or extra supports, that we have the ability to work with them and push them maybe in ways, obviously, that other districts haven't. So if you could just speak to that point one more time.
Yeah, I'll give you another example of how we're pushing them. And they get super excited about it because they love this technical work. So one of the things that we have been working on is ensuring that we have clear criteria for which students belong in which ELD courses in secondary. So we've identified different criteria so we've developed criteria to program English learners into specific ELD courses. And that's taken a really long time, a lot of reports building, and a lot of this in middle school is Dr. Lund has had to do it himself. So he would have to run reports for every site based on the criteria we developed. So we developed criteria based on number of years in the country, their LPAC scores, their iReady reading scores. And so he would manually do that and then send an email to the teacher saying, to the school sites, these students need to be enrolled in this course. What we ask them is, okay, that's a lot of work, and depending on one person, it really should, can we build a tile that says, at my school, so I'm at Franklin, these schools need to be enrolled in the CCR ELD course because they need the substantial support. So all they would do is click on the tile, and then all the students that need to be programmed into that course would appear there. We think that's pretty cool. And I think it would save Dr. Lund some time. And
Dr. Lund's very smiling and nodding a lot. And I appreciate that. And I know, having spent 2 years with you on the curriculum committee, that I love to get into the weeds about the ways that we use these kinds of technologies and support systems to drill down to help students. That it isn't about just having the information. It is about making it accessible to all of the folks from district level, site level, counselor level, teacher level, to provide the interventions that we need to see the progress that we want to see with our students. So I appreciate you clarifying those from a systems perspective. Dr. Benitez, I know you have a lot of notes on there, so fire away.
And I'm going to be super mindful not to monopolize our time here. I know no one wants to be here till 10.
Yeah, time check. It is almost 7 o'clock.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'll save some because I know we have some additional slides here. But I do want to stay on the data point, and I would invite Dr. Simon, Dr. Kale, Dr. C. Brown, actually our entire exec team here to chime in on this. So I want to start by giving a big salute that we actually have this data, because I couldn't even actually ask this question probably even just a year or 2 years ago. So this is great. And the fact that we're sharing this data through our student outcomes focused agenda is awesome. Having said that, what is being shared here is super concerning, given that Dr. C. Brown has shared that our multilingual learners are students that are struggling, if not the most, among the most in our district. So I want to break down this data here. And again, this is an open a question. Actually, I'm going to phrase it this way. We may not have the answer to this question tonight, but I know that our staff will work diligently to get some answers on this question. So that's the way I'll phrase it.
Okay.
So 59% of LBUSD students are Latinx. 15 to 16% of our students are ELs, emerging bilinguals here. 91% of our Latinx students are ELs. And I'm using a 10,000 or so, I think it's 10,014. I'm using your data, Dr. C. Brown. So about 91% of our ELs are Latinos.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, about 91%, roughly. This is hard for me. 1 out of every 4 of those students is either on an IRP or a 504 plan. So when we look at those two groups, when we have data on our students with disabilities, when we have data on our emerging bilinguals, on our multilingual learners, 1 out of every 4 of them is on an IEP or a 504 plan. That's way higher than this, disproportionately way higher than where we're at as a district, right? Egregiously, in my humble perspective, disproportionately higher. So the question here is, and again, I know we don't have the answer tonight, what's happening, right? We're talking about reclassification. Those students within the EL subgroup that are most struggling are our long-term English learners. So this is my question to the level head offices at elementary, middle school, high school. Systematically, something is going on here where we end up with 1 out of every 4 Latino ELs is being also, is in special education, basically. So I'll start with that. And those happen to be the students that are struggling the most in our district.
If I may, Dr. Benitez, you may recall in my years and years spent in research working with you, it's important to consider that our ELs are also part of the RFEP group combined. That our RFEPs were English learners previously. So when you look at the total EL population of who started off in our system not mastering English, who was learning English, it includes those RFEPs that are being monitored and those RFEPs that are fully exited. So when you combine those numbers, you're looking at roughly 20,000 students. And then when you figure out who has an IEP, which includes the, the 2,000, I think, Angie, you said
2,409.
2,409. And then you add in the RFEP students who have an IEP, which is 343, you actually end up at roughly 13% by comparison to the 12.5%.
So can you say that in, and I don't want to get caught up in the, is it 1% or 2%, but what this is showing, I mean, that took a lot of explaining and knowledge, Dr. Lund. That's a lot of nuance there on what the story behind these numbers are. The question is still, these two subgroups, as Dr. C. Brown has presented, are the ones that have experienced the, let's just say, biggest challenges based on the assessments that we have. And they happen to be overrepresented by either our African American students or Black students, which also is one of those subgroups. So when we disaggregate data that way, it's not clear, Dr. Lund, that out of those 59% of our students, we also know that they're disproportionately higher in our free and reduced lunch program. So can you clarify that a little bit more for us, Dr. Lund?
Yeah, so one, it doesn't negate the needs of our English learners. Yeah. The challenge with our English learner subgroup is what are those specific needs? Mm-hmm. And I think of it from a teaching standpoint, they fall into two broad categories: the needs of our newcomers, as students who are recent arrivals within our system that are just learning English, and then our long-term English learners who should have reclassified after 5 years, and they haven't. So that's where that deeper dive goes into. Why have they not reclassified? But you don't want to lose sight of all those students that have reclassified as well, that these are students who have actually started off as English learners and met the real rigorous criteria that we've set to reclassify and are doing quite well. And the 343 that have IEPs is probably a testament to the fact that they've done well within our system and have not needed that additional support. They've met that criteria for reclassification. So this is the only subgroup that we have in our system that removes students. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes it challenging as a subgroup. We siphon off students that are higher achieving and we remove them from the category. So that's why in my previous presentations that I always like to at least show you the EL plus RFEP combined, as these students started off as emerging bilingual students, collectively speaking. And we've siphoned off these students that have reclassified, and we're left with just those that have not reclassified. And that's where you see that higher need that shows up, especially those that have that intersectionality with a special education designation.
Yes, and I'm going to add an "and" here, and it's dialogical, right? I mean, this isn't we have had this conversation before, Dr. Lin. Again, I'm left with, I'm coming from a spirit of hope, but we're having a conversation about why we can't still get traction, right, in the best sense of the word, with one of our most vulnerable student subgroups that also happens to be, and again, we can talk semantics on what's in, what's out of the group, the largest subgroup in the district, right? If we can call that the largest subgroup in the district. So in the spirit of talking percentages, even if we just pulled out our students on IEP, that in and of itself requires certain targeted, specific strategies and interventions. Here, what I'm trying to highlight is that we have a triple dip, let's say, from our largest subgroup, right? Whether they're long-term English learners, currently ELs, have reclassified out. And the spirit for me of why this, gets me at the core is because we are also highlighting that there are systematic things like our reclassification that have disproportionately negatively impacted this group, and that's why we are pivoting, right? That's why we're making changes. So that's the work that for me is like, what are the nuances at the elementary school level? Because in 5th grade, if we have a long-term English learner and they started with us in kindergarten, something's off, right? Middle school, you just highlighted that. And then high school, because then it's a combination of what you just pointed to, Dr. Land. We have recent arrivals, we have long-term English learners, we have students that are reclassified out. But that's the weave that I was sort of hoping, like it's not a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter approach to this. And I want to be lifting up, like if we're talking about Black students and students with disabilities and students of color, that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not an either-or here either. So that's why I'm inviting sort of the team to chime in, because I know we can't answer that tonight, but I want to leave here, and I want our communities that are listening in to get a sense of, okay, what are those nuances, right? You spoke to a rethinking of our understandings, Angie. You talked about alternate assessment that we're using, that we just piloted, all right? I want to be able at some point to come back and say, we're getting traction on these 1 or 2 or 3 things, all right? And that's where my positive frustration is coming from, that I know we don't have that answer tonight, and my agency and my urgency is, okay, what can we get traction on right now, given that we have all this data that Dr. C. Brown is sharing with us. So thank you for that, Dr. Miller. That was helpful.
Dr. Benitez, if I will, I will say that I guess there's also, there's beauty, right, in data, right, being able to finally see where we need more work. But like you, there's also a point of, oh my, it hits you to your core, that this is kind of the state where our students are. So I can speak to OSSS, the level offices, OCIPD, research, so on and so forth, right? We're meeting. So even with OSSS, the Multilingual office, looking more specifically at our data, how we can be innovative and creative, and how we tackle such issues, whether it's based on our ELs or our Black students, and also setting goals, right, around that. So even for, let's just say, our special education teams and teams at sites, what are specific goals that we can even place within the IEPs that can help our students, right, get out of having an IEP, or even work to, right, graduating more to even identification within the EL status. So, I mean, I can just tell you this, I don't have the answer for you. I'm gonna be very honest and transparent in saying that, but I will say there are deep discussions around this data and how we can make impactful change, because this has exposed, right, the inequities within our system based on our ELs, and I can say our Black students based on our data that we presented here as well.
Sure.
And I would just add that, you know, bottom line is when we're looking at our RFEP EL population in total and what percent are on IEPs, and that looks to be fine, the bottom line really is the longer you remain an English learner, the greater the chances are you are going to be identified for special education services. So we do have a responsibility to dig into that data and figure out why that is, where that's happening. Are there grade level patterns we can look at? And so those are the kinds of things that we're talking about, like having these conversations together to really surface that.
Thank you. You have more slides for us that I think will go into the ways that we're supporting staff to do the work. Thank you.
Yes. So one more way that the dashboard is helping us is through the reclassification and monitoring process. So I referenced the reclassification process. They used to be done paper and pencil. Counselors receive a packet in the mail. They take the little paper to the teacher. So that's all gone. Everything is happening in the dashboard, from identifying which students have met reclassification, to gathering teacher input, to reviewing the data and the team deciding. All that's happening in the platform, which is why we're training counselors following Thanksgiving. So super excited about that. Elevation is also going to help us with monitoring those RFEP students that I mentioned earlier, right? So it was like, 3,000 students? So sprinkled across sites, mostly in the secondary sites. It's hard to keep track of them. And again, those were handled paper, pencil. So all that is happening in Elevation. That's where the teachers are going to start receiving flags on their dashboard, alerting them to some needing of monitoring. So all that is happening in the dashboard. So that's all part of that first part of the equation of getting to know your students, their strengths, their needs. The second part that really, like, we came to Elevation for the data, but boy, did they really sell us on the activities. And I say sell in a way, but they really impressed us with their activities. So the activities dashboard is that data bank, or a bank, I'm sorry, of over 100 effective instructional activities that support teachers with ELD instruction. So this is just an animated slide. Don't watch it too long. It's going to make you dizzy. But what essentially it does, these activities are designed around ELD objectives like clarifying input, fortifying output, developing language acquisition, things that English learners need every day to develop their language proficiency. And you can search it, you'll see in the video, you can search by grade. These are K-12. You can search by content area. So this is a tool that can be used across content areas. Our curriculum office has begun to embed these activities in those unit guides that have been revamped over and over and over again as we get feedback. And so a teacher can say, this is the lesson that we, or the concept that we're addressing in this content area, and the guide will link them to an activity here that's appropriate. Now, that's kind of cool, right? But you want to know what's super duper cool? Sorry, it's late. If you keep watching, look, see how it's scrolling? It's going to scroll down to a student list. So once you filter for, let's say, developing language acquisition, you filter for that, you pick the content area, it's going to actually give you a list of your students. Here it comes. See the students right there? This is a demo account, so it's not Long Beach students. It'll tell you these are the 5 students in your classroom who are going to benefit from this activity, from this lesson. That's differentiation served on a silver platter. So that is really the power in the activities dashboard that we're super excited about. You learn about your students, you learn about the strategies, and it tells you, and puts those things together here in the student list. It also gives teachers how to. They can download all those PDFs that gives them the lesson plan, and they can even play the video and watch a teacher actually implement this lesson. So super exciting resource that we're excited about. Questions about the dashboard? You probably want to know how have you trained folks? How are people finding out about this? So this is really hard to read, but we started training with Elevation, learning about Elevation in June, right around the time you guys were approving it. They were training our curriculum and instruction folks on both the dashboard, but really on those strategies. So they trained our folks so that over the summer, they started embedding these things. Then in August, we trained site administrators. And it was a first dose, and it was probably, it's like water hose, but site administrators got their first training around Elevation in August, mostly around the dashboard, but also showing them some of the strategies and other tools that come in Elevation that we didn't mention today. Then in September, we focused in on our middle school CCR ELD teachers, and I'm going to speak about CCR ELD in a minute, but essentially it's a designated ELD course for middle school students. So we trained them on the strategies on the data dashboard, among other things, and our curriculum leads in ELA actually use these Elevation strategies, activities as part of the curriculum, as they revamped the curriculum. In October, we trained every single site instructional leadership teams on Elevation, and hoping that, and asking them to go back to their site and then train their sites as well. As an additional support, and we're going to talk about site support, our site support people are also going out and training at school sites. And in November, like I mentioned several times, we're going to be training TK-12 counselors. So that's what the ground we've covered with Elevation since you all adopted it in June for us. So moving quite quickly on that. So we mentioned, Christy mentioned, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yes. Ms. Craig had his question.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I just have a point of clarification. So the instructional leadership teams inform the individual teachers at their school sites about this, and are the teachers now able to use this? I know it hasn't been very long, maybe a couple weeks at the most. So do we know if the teachers are using this yet, or will it be monitored at all to make sure that the teachers are using this? How are we going about that?
Yes. So the ask of sites was to go back and incorporate this into their professional development plans to support their teachers in the use of Elevation. In addition to the things listed here, there are other touch points OCAPD folks have with teachers, and we're taking advantage of all of those touch points. For example, at department heads, we meet with department heads every month, And every department head meeting, we showcase one strategy, and that's our opening activity that we use with folks. We actually engage them in the strategy and then refer them back to Elevation to show them how to use it. For the teachers teaching the middle school CCR ELD class, those teachers use it every day because it's part of the curriculum. We link it right back into that. So, and then the third question is, yes, we can track usage through the platform. So those of us that have admin rights can track user data. I have to admit I haven't tracked it in a couple weeks, but we were excited by what we saw. So yes, we can track it, and we hope that number increases. That could be one of those things that we measure our progress.
And so how are we supporting the teachers in this? The Elevation launch has been introduced to the teachers. They know what's available. But how do we support the teachers in their use of the program? Because this is all wonderful information. I think that's incredible that a teacher is given specific students in their class in need of extra, supports. But also, how are we supporting the teachers in doing that?
Right. So what I mentioned earlier, the department head. So the department head they function as the leader of that department. So that's one of their responsibilities, is to support their teachers, because they're receiving more professional development around it. They support the teachers. So that's the middle school and the high school. In next month, we are training every IIC. So if you recall, IICs are intervention and instruction intervention. I believe instruction comes first. Instruction and intervention coordinators. We're training every single one of them so that they can support teachers on their sites. And then the third way is what I mentioned earlier, Christy also mentioned, is that site support. So we've got these 3 ladies from the Multilingual office who are deployed at 39 of our sites. And they're deployed at not just any 39 sites, but they're deployed at the sites with the most English learners, with the English learners that are struggling the most. They are at sites that have the most RFET monitoring happening. So the sites that really could use the support, we've deployed them there. So they're there regularly, and that is one of the functions that they can serve. They can support teachers through that. You'll see them providing professional development to the entire staff. One of the examples we'll show you is at Jordan. So Nancy Lopez Hernandez here on the screen supports Jordan, and one morning she was there and she trained the entire staff on how to use Elevation, and then in the afternoon she came back and walked classrooms with the principal, not necessarily to see Elevation because that's kind of a quick turnaround, but to provide some feedback around supporting multilingual learners. So that's the other way that we're supporting. And hopefully those members of the instructional leadership team who also received the longer PD are also supporting. Okay. So that takes us to EL site support. So I think we've pretty much talked about these 3 ladies, Martha Ensminger that you saw earlier, Dr. Leola Oliver and Nancy Lopez Hernandez are out at sites every day, supporting them to develop effective EL programs. And that includes ELD implementation, it includes establishing ELACs, it includes parent engagement, professional development, effective monitoring, ensuring that interventions are happening. They've got their dashboard open and they're asking a lot of questions. And so that's something that is new this year. Last year we did not provide that centralized support beyond our sites that were going through federal program monitoring. So again, another way to be able to track some data to see how effective that intervention is, because we see it as an intervention. Something that they're also developing is a district-wide parent institute, and so we've done it in the past. We're excited that we typically get about 70 parents, and so this year they're hoping to beat that and really beef it up and invite parents 4 times a year to help support them as well. So those are the things that these ladies are helping out at sites with. So I'll pause here before what I will present to you next are some examples that we have for each of the level offices. And then we'll end with that. We good to go? All right. So I think we've mentioned most of these examples in our conversation throughout the evening. So I'll invite my colleagues from the Level Office to add any additional context to the 3 examples of collaboration across the Level offices and sites. And the first one is at Jordan High School. So one example, and I mentioned Nancy supports Jordan High School, and I've partnered with Jordan High School as well as just another set of eyes, another person to walk with the leadership team at Jordan. And so this is an example of an internal learning walk. So internal learning walks, it's a tongue twister, is one of those structures that we've sort of made district-wide this year. And at Jordan, it's supposed to be internal for the most part. That's why it's called internal. But Jordan here invited a couple of us folks from OCIPD to join them. And their focus is around EL student engagement. Their question was, what evidence do we have that Jordan classroom environment engages and supports all students, English learners, students in particular, based on the expectations outlined in Understanding 3 and Understanding 4. So they're putting understandings together, they're putting supportive English learners together, and they're really leaning into elevation and the support that OCIPD has provided. So that is an example of what we're hoping other sites do as well, is really capitalize on that support that we can provide them to truly partner in supporting English learners. So I don't know if Dr. Camarino, if there was something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, we had an opportunity, as you know, that the internal learning walks are really about what data, their equity dilemma question, and what data are they going to need to pull to show by the time that we meet in the spring for our CIV, our collaborative inquiry visit, what work and what steps and what professional development has been done since our internal learning walk with the team from OCIPD, with all of us internally and some of our principal supervisors. What I appreciate that Jordan had done is also, as we walked each classroom, they gave us the number of EL students in each classroom, male, female, and we were able to really pinpoint that. And what I appreciate what Jordan's leadership is doing is ensuring that all teachers recognize where their students are in their classrooms and every time they meet in their classes with them.
Yes, they were early adopters of elevation as well with their leadership team, and so thank you.
And really critical to what Angie mentioned earlier too is really using those unit guides as a testimonial to the fact that we are going to stick to the fact that we want all of our students to be exposed to rigorous standards in all of their classes. And that's super important for our quality core instruction to ensure that we're doing tier 1 intervention with all of our students in their classrooms.
Right, thank you. Our next example of collaboration with the middle school office we also have spoken about, and that's CCR ELD. So I know that's acronyms are your favorite thing, Board Member Miller, so let me break that down for you. So CCR stands for College and Career Ready, and ELD is English Language Development. And so what this course is, it's an additional ELA class for students needing, I referenced that the four levels of support for English learners. This is for the kids right in the middle that need the significant and moderate support. And so what it does, it provides substantial support to prepare English learners for reclassification. And we're really hyper-focused on that. You'll hear students talking about their LPAC levels. You'll see teachers differentiating based on what students need in order to reclassify. We see reclassification is the end goal. That is the goal that has been established for students. And that's done through small group ELD instruction. And it's based on high interest text and those elevation strategies. So I will turn over to Dr. Lund for any added comments on that.
Going to your question, Dr. Benitez, earlier, our students in middle school receive a differentiated experience depending on their English learner level. So starting off with our newcomers are programmed into a newcomer course if they are their first or second year in country. So I think of schools that have a large number of newcomers that have a designated teacher. Ms. Osuna, I can think of at Washington, Ms. Tillett at Hamilton, who provides a designated course within the student's schedule for English language development from a newcomer perspective. You know, working on basic interpersonal skills, developing vocabulary. They are also programmed into this CCR course. Mm-hmm. So newcomers, instead of taking a traditional English class, will have an ELD class and a CCR class. So 2 of their 6 classes throughout their day are really focused on language development. For our students that are not newcomers, that are English learners or long-term English learners, as Angie described, that are in the middle there, these students are really not meeting any reclass criteria at this point. So whether based on iReady, based on SBAC, or based on LPAC, they're not meeting any of those three criteria to reclassify. Those students all are programmed into a CCR class. So as their elective, we've talked about this previously, this is their elective that they take, but demonstrating that the need that they have, this is the course that's designated for them. And we have 35 sections that we added this year of CCR. Mm-hmm. And the difference this year is that this course is predominantly composed of English learners, which has not been the case in the past. What this does is it really allows our teachers to really focus on the needs of English learners. As an example, last week I was in Mr. Valle's class, our CCR teacher at Washington, and he was specifically referencing the LPAC. I have never heard a middle school teacher reference the LPAC. It is generally a test that is administered outside of classrooms, often by the counselor or a substitute teacher that comes in to administer this assessment. It is not a test that teachers really are engaged with or know really anything about. The training that OCIPD provided to our CCR teachers to teach them about the Elevation platform, to teach them about the CCR curriculum, also included a component around the LPAC so that they understand what students need to demonstrate to reclassify as one of the main criteria for reclassification. You need to score well-developed. You can't reclassify without being well-developed on the LPAC. So that's essential. And credit to Mr. Valle, who was referencing it with students, the importance of this exam that, like I said, normally is not part of their traditional classroom experience. In addition, I heard primary language support being used in his classroom. That is also not a common experience. So using Spanish as a way of teaching English and leveraging the capital that students bring to the classroom. And third, I heard specific references to the domains of the LPAC. So he specifically referenced the productive skills around speaking and writing, the receptive skills around reading and listening, and the development in his learning targets around those 4 areas. So really explicit language development being done in those classrooms. The third category of students are those students that are meeting at least one reclassification criteria. And these students are not in a CCR class. They are placed in a regular English class as their only class, with the expectation that that English teacher really provide that little push that they may need to meet all reclassification criteria. These students have a regular elective as part of their course programming. So you have those 3 different designations within middle school based on the needs of students. You're a newcomer, you receive these 2 classes. You're an English learner, LTEL, who has not met reclass, you receive a CCR class. You're an English learner who is meeting reclass criteria, you have a standard English class with additional support within that classroom.
Super exciting to hear you say all that, because we've been working so hard on this as a goal for us last year, and so it's really great to actually see it in action. So thank you. Our final example is elementary. I thought I'd flip everything, Brian. I know elementary always goes first, so we thought you'd go last. So this is exciting as well in elementary. In elementary, our collaboration is around accelerating literacy and language through science. You saw that video this earlier in the meeting with the teacher, the TOSA at Fremont and Prisk. And what we want is that experience for every single student in LBUSD, because we know how engaging science is. And we also know how much language and language development can come from that inquiry model of teaching. So in elementary, we are ensuring that every teacher receives direct professional development, and that's TK through 5 teachers, around those science instructional shifts grounded in the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards. But really focusing on purposeful use of language through the context of science and solving and designing and all that beautiful language that can come from that. So, Mr. Moskowitz, you want to add to that?
Sure, thanks.
I'm going to go back, Dr. Benitez, I think you said something a bit ago about when we're talking about English learners and redesignation, we're really talking about, for a student who comes to our system in kindergarten, we have to redesignate them before they leave elementary school. And that is a huge burden that I personally feel, and I know that our principals and teachers feel. That is our obligation, to figure out how to help our students to redesignate. And you may recall a couple of years ago, we brought data showing that, for example, we had literacy classes in our schools that weren't as effective as we would have liked. And so we completely changed the model to now we have our literacy teachers that are more highly trained, that are implementing specific pedagogies. And a lot of that was in relation to the fact that we had literacy classes that had a lot of English learners and African American students in them, and they were not learning the way they needed to. The redesignation is a very lagging indicator, right? It can take 3 and 4 years, and it's very typical for an English learner to take 3 or 4 years to redesignate. So we can't really wait till 4th grade to say, did we do our job? What are those things along the way? It's things like full day kindergarten for every student, where students have opportunities to use language all day long in their play-based learning, and their opportunities to interact with teacher, with peers. That is helping our English learners to develop that language in the same way that students on other parts of town have those opportunities throughout the day. So those are just some examples. You'll also recall a couple of weeks ago, I think 2 meetings ago, I showed that example of what is called Scarborough's rope, and had all those kind of ropes coming together. There were 2 parts. One at the bottom was the foundational skills, phonics, phonemic awareness, and at the top it was this large category around building language, comprehension. And so when we think about science and building literacy through science, it's really tapping into the other part of Scarborough's rope, building vocabulary for our students, building opportunities for language, for building knowledge about something. People who learn how to read and write well are doing that because they're learning about something. They're learning about science, they're learning about social studies, they're learning about concepts that are interesting and that you can experiment and learn more about and see it in real life. Going out into the real world and seeing things. That's how we learn words and how to communicate. And so giving this example of giving our teachers explicit skills on how to teach science and teach literacy, that is absolutely going to support our English learners. It's absolutely going to support all of our students. And it's just one example of ways earlier on, from the earliest age, kindergarten, 1st grade through, we're intentionally building students' opportunities to interact with language, that second part of Scarborough's rope, so that when they get to 3rd and 4th grade, that lagging time, we're able to start redesignating because we're able to get students who are able to read more proficiently.
Thank you. So we will end with, in the spirit of hope, I think Dr. Benitez mentioned earlier, really our goal for English learners that in LBUSD is that they experience that differentiated, rigorous instruction across all content areas, aligned to the ELD standards, and those LBUSD understandings and expectations that are going to lead them to language proficiency, but that's just the first step in their success. It's really about proficiency for both academic and personal success. We skipped a couple slides, so we're going to end here. Okay? All right, well, thank you so much for making space for this conversation. Thank you, colleagues, for your support and providing context.
Thank you for all of your hard work, and we see the slides about Riley and Whittier and colleagues. If we could follow up with Angie separately on some of those questions, or maybe we can explore them at another
Sure.
board meeting if we have more questions. But
Thank
I think
you.
we'll move on. But
Can I just ask, just to make sure I got Dr. Chris Brown's point about Dr. Lund's data? And it's not a yes or no, it's just, I'm going to ask it, just so that I leave here thinking that I understood this.
All right.
20 seconds,
All right.
seconds.
Go.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding that there is not a disproportionate overrepresentation of Latino ELs that are on IEPs or 504 plans, Dr. Brown, in comparison to non-Latino ELs in our district. Is that what I understood from Dr. Lund?
So if we use the term ever ELs, then that is correct. So we're talking about Latinx students who were ever an English learner, when you look at the totality of all of them in our system and their special ed designation rate, they're at about the same level as the system overall. When you're talking about students who are currently EL, so these are the students
Not
who have
yet redesignated.
not yet redesignated, for whatever reason, those students are overrepresented in the special ed designation categories.
So that's the data point that I would love to see, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, and we can definitely pull that data point. I would say that probably it's a lagging indicator, but the best indicator we're going to have for success with EL students will be a rapidly diminishing number of EL students, because truly for them to be successful, they're no longer considered ELs in our system, right?
Got it.
And that will be the metric we have to use.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, and I'm sorry. I'm glad that you said that last point, because when I first came on board, I think that you guys probably got tired of me asking the question, what does success look like? And I think that what you're talking about right now in regards to the redesignation rate of our students, that is what this data set will allow us to, will support in regards to our role within the board. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you again.
Okay. Ms. Cricket.
Yes, I would like to see the information from the Kumai language program at a future board meeting.
I see lots of heads nodding, so, okay. Okay, we'll move on to 17, other items, superintendent items, 17.1, student discipline. Dr. Brown.
Thank you, President Kerr, members of the board. I'm recommending expulsion of the following student 6875. The student listed would be expelled under Education Code 48900M. The student would not be eligible to apply for readmission.
Move approval.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 5-0-0. Moving on to item 18, new business. 18.1 was moved into the consent agenda A. And so we're at 18.2, approval of bylaws regarding the role of board governance, standards, public statements, agenda planning, and board meeting rules of order. I will speak slowly. I know Mr. Strumpfer has some updates on that. I do not believe we'll be taking action because some of the updates that he wants to continue to make in the language are not super significant, but enough that he would like to bring it back one more time. So Mr. Strumpfer, if you want to tell us when we can expect to see this item again.
Yeah, thank you. I talked to a couple board members on these bylaws, and we're going to make some additional changes. I'll share them again with the board, and we'll bring it back for the December 14th meeting for action at that time.
Great, thank you. So no further action on that. We are at report of board members. Mr. Otto, we'll start with you.
So I don't have a lot to report. I went to the Poly-PACE and Poly-CIT meeting last night, mostly for parents and who are interested in getting into or participating in those programs. And it was very interesting because of parents were there with kids, and it lasted for a couple of hours, and it was clear that everybody was very interested in their kids' education, which isn't a surprise to any of us, but that they were trying to find out what was really going on in these programs. So that was very moving. I got an opportunity to talk to people involved with both of those programs, and therefore learned more specifically about those two programs. I'd met with some Poly-PACE parents maybe 6 or 8 months ago, but as we say, it's all about relationships, and so getting to meet people and to see what drives them was very, very helpful. And I'll leave it at that. It's gotten late, and so that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Craighead.
Thank you. I attended the Milliken football game last Friday night, and it was a great game. Really a nail biter to the very, very end. The Milliken was ahead until the final seconds of the game, and there was that play in the end zone. Anyhow, I know that the Milliken, the Rams were very disappointed, but they should be proud because they played real well and showed a lot of heart. And it was very cold out there. It was very. I set my limit as I'm going to leave when it hits 50 degrees because it was real cold. And at the end of the game, it was 51 degrees, so I stayed till the end. I was able to attend the Veterans Day celebration at Longfellow. Principal Sam Plattis invited veterans and active duty personnel, including a 97-year-old World War II veteran, and so that was really, he's a wonderful man. He's been to a lot of Mr. Plattis's Veterans Day events over the years, before when he was at Bixby and everything. And there were 2 essay contest winners. The prompt for the essay was, if you could have lunch with a veteran, what would you ask them? And there were 2 winners that read their essays. Very impressive. 2nd grader Savannah Motley and 4th grader Mimi, Mimi. She was wonderful. They were both great, very impressive essays. And they had a flag ceremony to replace the older flag that was not in such great condition with a newer, bigger flag. That's what Mr. Plattis wanted for the Longfellow Lions, and that was exciting to see that new flag go up. I also joined the Award of Valor event, a long-time tradition for Lakewood City and the City Council, and they pay tribute to honorees who have shown a commitment to public safety in the community, including 2 of our Lakewood students who were honored, and that was Kaylin Ayano and Zion Jefferson. And they were being honored because there was a situation in front of Lakewood High School where there was a fight in front of the school, and there was a mom who was dropping off a student. She got out of the car to go intervene in the fight because a student was involved. Well, she inadvertently left the car running, and it was not in park, and so the car was moving. And so these 2 wonderful students jumped in the car to prevent the car from hitting anybody, from hitting another car. And then they also rescued a 3-year-old who was in the back seat. So they got the car safely. Got the car in a safe situation. Nobody was injured because of that car rolling out of control, and the 3-year-old was rescued. So those 2 girls were honored, among really so many others, but it was that story that stood out a lot to me, and of course community members that had other equally heroic, but I just thought I would highlight a couple of our Lakewood students. And then one announcement, because I noticed our announcements were tied in with reports. So, and I'm sorry to our sign language interpreters in the other room because I'm talking a little fast. But there is a craft show at McBride Saturday, December 3rd from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There will be food, music, a raffle, and it is benefiting the Health and Medical Pathway. So I thought I would mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Benitez.
I'm not going to let it go, Mr. Zaid. I'm still thinking about it. So I'm going to build off of Dr. Simon's comments and observations about areas that we need to do better in. And I appreciate my colleagues over here asking for an update on the dual immersion programs that we have. So this has been I've been thinking about our conversation, Dr. Kale, and about this presentation since we received it with our agenda. And really what I'm trying to process is, I'm going to keep it real. Our multilingual learners are struggling, right? No ands, ifs, or buts about that. And then we also have wonderful dual immersion programs that we're trying to promote and highlight and encourage caregivers and parents and students to enroll and for us to support those dual immersion programs. And they're all not equally being successful, but for the most part, it's a value around multilingualism that we promote and highlight in our district, and we should be doing that. You know, at the same time, we still have some challenges with our interpretation and translation of materials to school sites. So I'm just kind of thinking through some of our most vulnerable students that are multilingual are struggling. Some of our best and brightest students that are in our dual immersion programs are exactly where we want our students to be. And we still have some structural challenges in terms of translation and interpretation. So it's great to hear about what we're doing, right? And I'm locking in on it's a new start because of things we couldn't do through our virtual and remote learning. But I keep on pivoting back to where are we getting traction, all right? I know we have some new assessments, new data, and what is or isn't going on, Dr. Simon? I mean, clearly we have some rethinking and re-strategizing to do, but clearly there are examples of things, you know, Mr. Moskowitz, that we've said, that's not working, let's pivot. What I worry about is, to Mr. Miller's point, okay, so where's our starting point, right? Because we had some data prior to the pandemic, you know, looked like we were making progress and growth in some areas. You know, pandemic caused us to rethink that and kind of, okay, we're starting new in some other areas. And that conversation that we had around hope, Ms. Craighead, and one of the things I do think that inspires hope or provides hope is that agency and urgency from our piece. And Mr. Moskowitz, I keep thinking like, yeah, we can't wait 5 years to figure out if our redesignation's working or not. So those are my thoughts, what I'm leaving with, and I would offer this in terms of what's going on or what's not going on. We had a wonderful opportunity, and I've been a part of this presenting of the portfolios for our GATE teachers. We highlight them, we encourage them, we recognize them. I would love if my colleagues would support this and would be interested to also have similar opportunities for our teachers that are working with our most at-promise students, our literacy teachers, our RSP teachers. We visited Alvarado and saw the impact of what pulling out some students at critical times during the day is having. I know we don't have like a formal certification, but it would be great, right, with some of these supports and professional development opportunities, if we could bring that same recognition that we do to our GATE teachers and to our GATE students, to those students that are most at promise for us. And so I bring it back to, you know, I'm coming from a spirit of hope here, because a lot of work has to be done for those not yet designated Latino ELs, but for all of our students, all right, in those subgroups. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
First, I just wanted to thank my colleagues and everyone here today as everyone reached out during my absence post-surgery, and I've been on the road to recovery. I try not to trivialize the act of surgery, but the recovery is still recovery, and I just really, really appreciate everyone being supportive from a emotional standpoint, but also from even the small things like holding door and grabbing water for little old me. So thank you. I'm happy to be back. Missed you guys, even though it was only a couple of weeks. All things considered, going into today's meeting, I was almost abruptly reminded of the importance of the work when I hear Dr. Benitez speak to some of our disappointing numbers around our students who are coming from some of our toughest neighborhoods and are trying to be accepted, both from a language standpoint and from an aptitude standpoint. So all things considered, today's data, or I will call it, we didn't say it was data, it was a programmatic presentation, but some of the data that was presented as well is still very humbling, because it still reminds us that there's a lot of work to do. And unfortunately, as Mr. Moscovitz said, we won't know the answers, or we won't just see the results today or tomorrow or next year. I think that it's just a quick reminder on why this work is so important and why we must continue to make these students an important component of these meetings and put them on the forefront of the conversations and every piece of data that we bring up. So I appreciate everybody who were presented today and reminded us of that. In regards to some of my announcements, first, right before I left, the day before my surgery, actually, let me take a step back. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke about the YBS group at Wilson High School. And after I gave them a quick shout out, they invited me to their meeting. And so their next meeting was the meeting the day before my surgery. So I was able to stop by and meet a lot of the students and see not only their jovial faces, but also see some of the work that they had planned for the future. Things not just centered around a hangout space for kids, but also creating what I've spoken to many of times, which is Village, where they got an opportunity to address the needs of Black students, and they're verbalizing those needs. They are speaking to their academic success and why supporting one another is important. They are uplifting one another when it comes to their successes, as one of the students in YBS was also homecoming queen. And so I just really, really appreciated an opportunity to hang out with those young men and young women just before I was going to be a little bedridden. So it was definitely a good uplift. In regards to just some quick community announcements, I have a number of activities going on in my district. There are a few that I'm supporting personally, one of which is our turkey giveaway over at MLK Park. Unfortunately, let me take a step back. We posted the flyer, and the signups went like that for 100 turkeys. I mean, signups were done in less than 24 hours. So unfortunately, we closed the survey, and we'll be giving out turkeys and boxes of canned goods on November 20th. But there's still other opportunities for food giveaways, as I know that there are folks who are often looking for canned goods. And so another organization that I'm very, very proud to support in Love Beyond Limits does a food giveaway on Wednesdays from 9 to 11 at Kings Park. They'll be doing so since this week, going all the way through December 15th. So there's still that opportunity there. And then they have one of my favorite events, probably one that I won't be participating this year, in their basketball event. I think I've learned my lesson about basketball courts. I think I'll stay away this time. But they do a big community event that is culminated with a big basketball game between the community and sometimes PD, sometimes fire, sometimes other community members. Like I said, I think there's a really, really good chance that I won't be playing this year. But the fundraiser is great, and there's great food, and there's a lot of love in the space. It's over at Nelson Academy, and from 10 to 4 this year. So if you're available, feel free to attend. It is one of my favorites, as I've been there since the beginning. It actually was centered around the founder's daughter's birthday, because that's always her birthday weekend. And so that she asked her mom to host a fundraiser to help people in her community, and then they've turned it into a great event, and I'm very, very honored to support. So if you're available, please attend and support. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief as well. Last night I had the opportunity to be I was invited by the Junior League to take part in their legislation and libations conversation at Trademark Brewing. And their theme this year was public education. So I was asked to speak alongside Assemblymember O'Donnell, who is retiring and finishing his term in just a few weeks, to really talk about the good work of the district, the importance of public education in our community, and hear from community members about their own personal experience. So it's always an honor to represent the work of this team. David, thanks for the extra notes. That was my favorite part, talking about our teacher retention and recruitment and some of the innovative things we're doing, talking about equity work and that stuff that is so important to us. So thank you to the Junior League for continuing to engage with us and be one of our partners in education in this town in ways large and small. We know we rely on our nonprofits to do work in individual school sites as well as the district at large. So thank you to them for the invitation to be a part of that. I'll mix up both announcements and conversation here. So the hackathon is happening on December 4th before we meet again at 4 p.m. at Sato Academy. So our students will be hacking, I don't know what the toy is this year, to make it accessible for all of our students and students with disabilities. So they'll be making circuit boards and creating buttons that are separate from electronic toys so that everyone can access those toys. It is an amazing event to be a part of. So if you are around on December 1st at 4 p.m., head to Sato Academy to do that great work. Also, last night I was with, at Junior League, a pediatric nurse at Miller Children's. And she was raising the concern about colds and flus and RSVs, and really sending a warning signal that they're full over there. We have a lot of sick kids in our community these days. I remember when my kids were little and my grandmother and my father, who were infirm, lived with me, that RSV was one of those scary things that you didn't want very young kids to get or very older folks to get. And they're getting it, and our middle schoolers are getting it. I talked to a high schooler in Long Beach at St. Anthony, and she said 117 kids were out 2 weeks ago. St. Anthony's is not that big of a school, so for 117 kids to be out after a dance or an event. This nurse was urging us to be really vigilant as we enter a time of spending time with our families and friends, because folks are really, really sick right now. They don't necessarily have COVID. But RSV is no joke. It is fever and really bad cold. So imploring folks to take care of yourselves, take care of each other. If you're feeling sick, don't go to school. Don't come to work. We know that our young people we were talking about really have some anxiety around missing, especially our high schoolers, missing work. We want them to be healthy more than anything. So we'll have those conversations about grace and missing work, because we need you to stay home if you are not feeling well. We need you to not come to work if you are not feeling well, and take really good care of yourselves. We have hand sanitizer and masks that I'm just saying they're available, and maybe we should start using them. So as we gather next week together, potentially with friends and family, as Saturday and Sunday come around, see how you're feeling. And if you're not feeling great, please stay home and take care of yourself. That's what we want. We want folks to be healthy. So that's really important. I will do that before I do this next piece. Yes. So also Port of Long Beach, at one of their meetings in August, honored Bobby Smith. So they have this beautiful resolution that we will pass along to Bobby Smith Elementary so that they can display it. But we thank another part of our community for honoring Bobby Smith's commitment and dedication to our students and our community overall. So as we enter the season of gratitude, channeling my best Dr. Baker, which isn't that great, reminding us to take care of each other, to look out for each other. Holidays are tough for people sometimes. And so when folks are struggling and you hear it, reach out. It's super, super important. So I'm grateful for all of you who take care of our kids from this building, for folks who take care of kids on every school site, and for students who we really are seeing trying to take care of each other in new ways that I'm seeing differently as a parent. And so families that are taking care of each other's kids, thank you. Continue to do that. Rest well next week. And then we got a couple more weeks till the rest of the holidays. But my deep gratitude for all that all of you do for our school communities.
President Kerr, can I just make one announcement? I've forgotten.
Yep.
Mr. Miller, remind me. So, holiday dinner giveaway, November 22nd. I think that's next Tuesday. Then Ms. Herrera, one of our teachers, asked if I could provide information. If you want to volunteer, come out for a few hours. We'll be at the parking lot at the Museum of Latin American Art. About 9 a.m. or so. The dinner holiday giveaway will start at 10, but we need help with setup, getting everything ready so that we can provide some holiday dinners for hundreds of families. So if anyone wants to come out and volunteer for a couple hours Tuesday morning, we're happy to have you. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Brown.
Thank you. I'm going to join you in a message of gratitude on behalf of Dr. Baker and our senior team as we enter into a season where many celebrate all kinds of different holidays and reasons to gather. Just a huge message of gratitude to our staff. This is a tremendously large operation, the largest employer in the city of Long Beach, and what it takes to move our efforts forward on behalf of students and community is tremendous. So I not only want to thank our certificated and classified staff, but I want to encourage us and anyone who remains watching, all of our 1 million viewers, to thank somebody who may not normally be thanked. Our nutrition service workers, our custodial crews who care for our grounds, our instructional aides who show up day over day, our school secretaries who run the buildings and move the work forward, always our teachers, always all of our instructional staff, our administrators. Specific recognition to our high school teams. Our high schools are like small cities. There are events every single day happening on behalf of our high schools, and we like to celebrate those on behalf of our students, but they don't happen without a lot of effort on the part of our staff. And then last, but always first, our students. Our students are really holding new expectations for us, and that's a good thing. They are our partners, and we are working very hard to be what and who they need us to be. So I want to express gratitude to them as well. They also work very hard, and sometimes we don't talk about the way that students work, but they do, and those of us who are parents watch that happen. So I really want to acknowledge them. I also want to say that on this Friday night, we should all be rooting for Lakewood. As Lily, our student board member, earlier mentioned, they will be in the semifinals this Friday night. Jay, help me with the location.
It is in the 909 area code, Valverde High School.
So let's root for Lakewood. They're our remaining high school football team in the playoffs this weekend. Thank you so much.
Mr. Miller.
You know, as a fellow Ram football player, saying Lakewood is a trigger for me. But yes, I'm rooting for them. I hope nothing but the best. But yeah, it's a little rough.
We have a Lakewood jersey for you to wear Friday, so we'll bring it to you.
Thanks, everybody. Go Lancers. See you next time.